Yeah, we're somebody.
Okay, if this is, please stand by. I didn't know if I should start. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Newington Town Council special meeting for the town manager's budget review. Today is Saturday, March 19th. I apologize for the slight delay getting started. We are starting the meeting now at 9:06. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. It appears that technology can be finicky at times, but in the morning especially, it took us a little longer to get started this morning. I apologize for that. We're going to begin with the roll call, please.
Counselor Braverman. Here. Counselor Camillo.
Here.
Baby, I don't have sound.
Oh, we just got you, Sharon. You just came through.
Are they talking?
Yeah, they're doing roll call.
All right.
Counselor Donahue.
Here.
Raise your hand or whatever.
Counselor
Here.
Wayne.
I don't
Sorry.
have coordinates to go.
You have
Counselor
sound.
Nagel.
Here.
Counselor Page. Counselor Rada.
Here.
Mayor Del Buono.
Here.
Say,
I'm here. It's Sharon Braverman.
Okay, Sharon, we got you. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, next item on our agenda is public participation. This is a special meeting, so public participation is allowed only on items on the agenda, which today is a budget review. Public participation is limited to 3 minutes. If you would like to participate by Zoom, you can raise your hand in the participants window, or if you are on your phone, *9 will allow you to be recognized. Let me just grab my attendees window and see if anyone's there. We'll give it just a minute for anyone participating remotely.
this is the volume.
Okay. I'm fine.
Okay, I do not see anyone with their hand raised at this point, so we will continue on.
Made it too low?
Yeah.
Remarks by counselors on public participation. There was none, so we will continue on. All right, we are beginning consideration of old business. Today we have departmental budget review, and we are beginning with CIP, always a fan favorite.
It is.
Counselors, you should have received a packet with the proposed CIP plan with the blue cover. That's what we'll start reviewing.
Yes.
All right, Janet, it's all yours.
I'll start by saying the increase this year for total CIP is $587,475. As I go through each section of the CIP, I'm going to start on page 11 of your book. I'll go through discussion of the changes from prior year, because as we talked about last year, we're trying to put the 5-year plan in and kind of stick to it. So there has been some minor adjustments due to cost adjustments or a little bit more refinement of the Owens report. And you'll also have here today the department heads to answer any questions for their sections. Page 11?
Yes.
This is the general government section. If Joe and Paul want to come up, I'll just briefly go through these and then you can ask them any questions about their projects. This year, we're seeing a few changes from what we had planned last year in here. There is a change for, if you see general property improvements, last year we had 216,400. This year we have 125,000 instead. What we decided to do is kind of just flatten it out every year instead of having blips every other year. There was also the added demolition of the fire storage building on Chapman Street. There's new numbers for the radio lease. When we got more of the contract bids in numbers, which Paul will discuss, we refined that number. There's also the Fire Alpine Red software. This came about during the year, knowing that the fire department had to go off the firehouse software. And we did not include, this is something if you wanted to include it again this year, you'll have to add it, is the additional amount for historical properties that we added at the end of last year. So that one is not in here. So just to go through the list that we have here, starting with the 2022-23 column, you have reval. Every year we put in money, so we'll be ready to do revaluation. So it's $25,000 each year. The town beautification project for $25,000 that we started last year is still in there also. General property improvements for $125,000. Town building roof replacement repairs for $1.5 million. The demolition of the fire storage building on Chapman Street for $185,000. The radio leases for $610,000. The Fire Alpine Red software project for $83,690. And the transfer to the technology fund for $450,000. So if you remember last year, we determined that the technology purchases should not be included in here. So we set up a separate fund. So this money will go over into that technology fund that we set up for computer replacement, Microsoft license renewals, monitors, any of the hardware servers and stuff like that. So I open it up to you guys if you want to start from the start and start with Joe and head on to Paul for any questions regarding these projects.
Just so the public knows, we do have Paul Boutat and Joe Salamone here for our two of our department heads. If anyone has questions.
We supposed to,
Counselors, I've got it. Counselor Mankey.
the money for historical present properties for 50,000, was that spent this year?
No, not as tight.
So how much is in there now?
There is $33,000, 500 remaining.
Do you anticipate any major projects on our historical properties in the next fiscal year?
We are doing the Kellogg House roof and garage roof, which is going to come out of the roof fund.
Okay,
But that specific location also needs some paint and wood repair. Same thing with the Kelsey House. The paint is chipping in multiple locations. So that's a project that we would embark on this year.
so is the $30,000 is that carried over from last year, from this fiscal year to next fiscal year? And will that cover those two projects?
I haven't gotten hard numbers on those two projects, but we'll use it accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko and then Counselor Donahue.
Yes, I was gonna follow, I might have the same questions on historical properties, and Janet, maybe I missed, why are we not funding it anymore?
It just hadn't been included because it wasn't a departmental request last year. So that's why I'm letting you know it's not there. It was something that you guys added at the end.
Right.
So it's missing from the list now. It's something that you want to add.
But to the, from the Owens report, I mean, there were significant issues with the historical.
Some of that will be covered under some of the other areas that Joe has funding for.
So we flattened out that line item at the 125,000 to take care of Owen report items that have been identified by them. And then
Historical properties.
for all properties, yes.
But we have the option of possibly funding
Yes.
this, okay. And then a second question, I'm just curious, the 25,000 for town beautification, has that been spent? I know they talked about.
Most of it has been spent. That's not really under Joe. That's under a separate committee that handles that. But most of that has been spent. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next hand up is Michael Camillo. Counselor Camillo is online with us. Counselor Camillo.
Morning.
Morning.
This is the first I've heard of the original Company 3 being demolished. That building's got a lot of history. 185,000 might put it back in the shape it needs to be and keep it standing. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I will say, I don't know, it's Company 3 we're saying to mention, it's the storage shed on Chapman Street.
That's the original Company 3.
Right.
Okay.
Counselor Donahue?
Wasn't there a grant for some of the roof repair on the Kellogg house?
There is.
Okay.
Correct. The cost.
Counselor Page?
Mayor, this is for.
Okay, Counselor Rada. They're sharing a hand raise function.
Yes, thank you. No, I would just like to echo Councilor Camillo's concern that I view that the old firehouse on Chapman Street could possibly be a historical site, and why we are not considering some type of renovation or maintenance rather than demolition. Having been a member of Company 3, it's dear to my heart, but beyond that, I see this as one of our historical properties.
Is this part of looking at an expansion, or is this, why are we demolishing?
It's in a, I would.
Owned before identified some concern beyond repair. The building is in such a state that I reviewed it along with Jack Musculata from the fire department, and both of us in our evaluations deem that it's an unsafe building. Things that are being stored in there are just rotting away because it's condition. The cost, I don't have the number in front of me from the owner's report, but the cost to repair and the cost to replace it doesn't make sense.
It would be more than what we're
correct.
looking at for the demolition.
And I can get you that information if you like.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Any other council comment or question on this one? Continue.
Any questions for Paul?
Anything you want to share, Paul? You usually have a lot to share.
I'm usually quiet and soft spoken, right? But just give you an update on the public safety radio project. I think that's a big project that we have on that I've been just managing as far as trying to get all of the things accounted for that each department would need for fire needs, EMS needs, public safety, town general government, also taking into account that, the current system also services Newington Public Schools. So what we have right now for a direction is that for our public safety entities, as well as the town general government components, those are all eligible to go on to the state of Connecticut's land mobile radio system. And it looks like it makes sense for us from everything that we've gathered using a consultant to go onto that particular platform and to move in that direction. So we've received pricing from Motorola, recent pricing just as recent as Friday evening I have from the state on that. So what we've budgeted right now is in the area that we need to be. So it's not exceeding that limit, but what's not inside the cost are some of the things that we'll either have to pick up on the facility side as far as electrical needs that may be needed at one site or changes that may be needed to a panel, those type of things there. Those are not accounted for in the cost. And it's difficult to price that out. You may need it at one site, you may not need it at another. So we'll basically have to have some funds available for that. We also have the fire department has outdated Minotaur radios, I think a quantity of 50 that may be on the old site. I'd have to check with Chief Trauma on that. I see that we have one of the fire commissioners here. And then some of the Knox box upgrades. These are devices inside certain apparatus for the fire department. When they come into a secure area, they have dispatch release a code, which unlocks the Knox box, which allows them to get keys to get into a building or into a secure enclosure, condominiums, things of that nature. So both of those are be separate. We could continue operating them under the old legacy system that we have until we can, find out true costs on that and then factor those upgrades into next budget year. That is something that we could do. As far as the system that the Newington Public Schools are using right now, again, Marcus Communications has told us they have plenty of equipment that can maintain that system going forward on a break-fix model. And then we've also received pricing on upgrading them to a new digital mobile radio system. And we have that probably right now about $500,000, could come in less, but that would also replace all of their radios in their buses, transportation, their portables that they utilize, as well as some tower infrastructure work that would be needed at the Callahan site. So those are some of the decisions that we have. Even though if we move forward with public safety on the radio front with the state, there are still some legacy needs that two of our departments require infrastructure for. So the fire department with their ground frequencies, that would still have to be operated locally. So we still need a tower that could either be the Newington High School site or that could be the Callahan site. Chief Traumer has told me that he could run operations for his legacy gear off of the one site at the high school if need be. We ideally like the Callahan site due to elevation. And then if we're going to do something for the Newington Public Schools, again, that elevation is better than, say, the high school site, which has always served as a backup for us if we needed that. So that's what we have right now. Budgeting is on target from what we have with finance, so I'm comfortable with that. Any scenarios that do come up, we do also have some money that we've accounted for the year one funding that we put aside. So if that comes up, we can cover those type of costs there. And then we have a few things that we'll have to factor in on year 2 through 5 on the Motorola pricing. You're looking at about a $70,000 maintenance cost going forward on year 2 through 5 and in the future for the equipment. And the Marcus communication, and once those upgrades were done, you're looking at an estimated cost of between $12,000 to $15,000 now that we'll have to factor in for those operating costs in future years as well. That would pretty much write our public safety radio infrastructure. It would give us the two options. It gives us one by having our own radio infrastructure. If something were to happen with the state, would have an infrastructure that we could capitalize on, and we wouldn't want to let that go. Some states have given up their infrastructure, and then if something were to go bad, then you'd have to be scrambling trying to look for some of those locations. So if we maintain use of Callahan site, maintain our high school site, I think that'll serve our needs well moving forward.
Is there an anticipated timeline for getting started on this? Or, I mean, you've been started on it for quite a time. I don't mean it like that,
The
but
price quote for Motorola right now is we have until June in order to sign the contract, in order to lock in pricing.
okay.
So right now we have a 5-year lease that we've accounted for. It's a 7-year lease in total for a lease purchase with the dollar figures and the lease rate locked in as long as we sign this agreement by June. We still, in that short term, have to negotiate, which we've already done preliminary contact with the city of New Britain, because part of the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio System is utilizing 3 RF radio frequency sites, radio tower sites in New Britain, at which point we just have to do an MOU with them to keep everything above board. And what we're utilizing there is, maybe in exchange for them using our police public safety range and us using their towers could be a trade-off, right? So they utilize our facilities frequently, and this just may be a wash, but it just should be a formal agreement. And then we engage into a formal agreement with the state of Connecticut on an MOU, and that term is for 20 years. I'll double check it. I believe it's 20 minimum. And then that would be no rate charges from the state of Connecticut. So we'd be able to use the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio System without charge. The only thing we're responsible for are any fees that we have to pay Motorola for our equipment or our maintenance to the state for the console that would integrate with the state system.
Okay. We do have a few hands up. Counselor Mankey?
Just clear, this is a lease to buy option?
Correct.
So it's 7 years you said to lease to buy?
That's the package that was offered.
So this would be carried on 2 more.
We'd have to, yes, and the next, our CIP only goes for 5 years, so we would account, yes.
And the other question is on the Fire Alpine, that's a one-time purchase.
That's a one-time acquisition. So I did some research on that because one of the concerns that we had is, do we have a contract vehicle because of the dollar figure? So we confirmed that on Friday. So there is a contract vehicle that we are eligible to utilize to buy that. So we don't have a bid or RFP situation in that scenario. So again, that is a one-time acquisition similar to what they bought on their firehouse application. But this system that they're on right now is reached its end of life. So the decision is either upgrade to their new platform, which did not have the bells and whistles and the features that they're looking for in the Red NMX product. Some of the local fire departments in the area are also moving to the Red NMX. So to have familiarity, some consistency in the region, that's what the fire department would like to do.
Okay. And will there be an annual subscription rate then after that?
There will be an annual subscription rate that will be put into the maintenance contracts going forward for our operating costs.
Thank you.
Counselor Page?
In the event of a storm where we're out for a week, power's out everywhere, like we've experienced in the past, it's operated, the system's operating off of generators?
All of our core infrastructure buildings are supported by generators. So our public safety center, as far as police department, is on an emergency generator backup. Town halls on emergency generator backup. 25% of this building, but our core infrastructure pieces are covered by that.
And all those systems are up to where they should be in terms of.
The things I can't account for, and then, so I can count for us, and I can say for, 25, 30 years here now, we pretty much have run a high, availability as far as 24/7 operations. Once we go to putting our services on the internet, someone else's equipment, if you will, then we're beholden to the internet circuit. So Red NMX is a web-based application. If the internet is, down, or if they're impacted from service level, then that system is unavailable. In public safety, all of them know that you cannot rely on the technology. You have to rely on one important thing, which is the public safety radio system. That is key to them. If someone can dispatch them, someone can get a hold of them and send them on to where they need to go, that is probably more important than a badge, a gun, and a fire hose. You got to initially get there and get that information. So plans are always in place to operate manually. On the town side, we were down, several years back when we had a major storm for 2 weeks almost without power. And the IT department relocated and brought equipment down and brought it to where we had generator power, and, haven't missed the payroll, haven't missed the finance closing.
No, they went to do
ever.
payroll at
So,
the PD. So.
You're welcome.
Counselor Nagel.
Yes, this is a simple question that may have a simple answer or not. We have found with other things that there have been differences between how the town wishes to manage things and how the Board of Ed wishes to manage things. I just want all of us to be reassured what you've stated today, that all parties have agreed to this particular system, the Board of Ed, as well as the fire department, police, and so on, to go forward. Are there some glitches to come down the road, or are there some expenses problems to come down the road?
My direct point of contact at the Board of Education is the Director of Security, which is Michael Morgan, former lieutenant from the police department. I understand how he utilizes the existing radio infrastructure. We went over what the changes would be. Right now, we have one system which has a capacity issue with Newington Public Schools being on there. That's an area of why public safety looked at trying to segregate or come on a different system, an actual public safety rated system, where the system that we're on now is more of a commercial based system, if you will. He is aware that there's going to be changes. Most schools, once you start having, say, law enforcement officers fill their director position, your mindset is to always have a system of what you're used to when you left, right? But a school typically would have a DMR system in today's day and age, and that's been confirmed through Motorola, through Marcus Communication. And then there's that integration to where if we need to have something integrated, we can do it at the console location, so we can have system A talk to system B through some different technologies. There's also the ability to provide, a radio if needed to security teams at the high school. So those issues have been discussed. And Marcus Communication has a new radio that'll be coming out soon on Kenwood, which would give the schools the ability to purchase that radio, and then we could accommodate them communicating on the state's system to us. So we do have some things to take into account. But right now, if we keep things status quo, make that conversion, and then look at that integration, how it's going to take place going forward. There may be a change in how things work, but we will always make sure that it works.
Okay, is there any problem in terms of cost effectiveness depending upon the glitches, or is that an unfair question to ask?
Public schools, the state of Connecticut won't allow school systems to come onto that public safety system. It is a P25. I mean, it's more than what you would need for basic transportation needs. So in that particular case, it would be cost prohibitive to bring them on. And that's why we broke the project up the way we did. Again, a regular DMR system, if we were to put a brand new one in today, probably less than $500,000 if you had a site to bring up the equipment. And at that point, you would marry those two systems at the console's location and dispatch, so the dispatcher can talk to them, they can talk to the dispatch. You may have a situation where a dispatcher has to relay the message to the frequency people, the people on the public safety, but it's all at a button for them. They would just like police department, fire department, there's something issue going on at the high school and whatnot, they would be the relayer of the message. That's what we do now when we don't have direct communication from one person to the other.
Okay, that's the example you gave is one of the things that we would not understand unless you specifically had said that, it's, I won't call it a glitch, but a difference because of state and policies that create problems. And of course, financially, we're concerned about that. If we don't know that, we red lights go up or we're wondering what actually is going on. So thank you for that explanation and for clarifying to some extent as to what some of the problems maybe or not be in terms of coordinating, especially with the Board of Ed and state mandates or state policies. Okay, thank you.
Any other council comment or question? All right, we're good on there. Thank you. Thank you.
Go on to the next section, which is public safety. This stayed pretty consistent to last year. The only difference is that we're requesting firehouse, all 5 of them have replacement of door openers. In exchange, we kind of moved off thermal camera imaging. So you'll see 3 items slated for the next budget year. That's the radio replacement reserve for $40,000, which we do every year. It's offset by the revenue we collect for the tower rental. And then you'll see the fire department personal protection equipment replacement. Originally, we had that down as $70,000, but as we talked during operation, the cost of all their gear stuff has significantly increased. So it's down for $85,000. And the firehouse, all 5 replacement of door openers.
Council comment question? Councilor Mankey?
Replacement of door openers, those are the actual buttons you push to open the door?
Do you want to answer that one? Yes.
The garage door openers itself for the base, for the doors.
So like when I go to my house, I push the button, my door opens. And that's 30,000?
I think that's what
Microphone so the public can hear you as well, please.
I mean, I'm not opposed to them.
I just want to make sure they can hear the answers as well.
You can bring Chief LaPierre up also.
Oh,
He's
Chief
online.
LaPierre is on with us as well via Zoom.
Yes.
Okay. I apologize, Chief. I can't see everyone on my screen, so there you are now. I see you. All right.
So with the door openers, we've had some trouble in the past few years. And as the door companies come in, they are actually not even allowed to work on many of the door openers for safety reasons. And they're not your standard garage door openers that we have in our homes. They're much more robust and have to meet certain requirements. Chief Nescalata went through with the door company, identified all the issues with the doors. And so that we don't have a door opener go down and be surprised with a $5,000 or $6,000 repair retrofit for what's needed now in today's day and age. We wanted to get this project done. So again, it alleviates that piece out of the puzzle of not being able to get out of a door or have a failure that we're not prepared to pay for.
So these are the actual overhead machinery that pulls the door open, correct? Okay.
Yes, it's the machinery with the springs, and now they have requirements for safety.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, if you walk through, it shuts the doors off so that it can't inadvertently close on a piece of fire apparatus or somebody walking through the opening.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Mega, this is Chief Chalmers, just so we can, it also includes all the door panels that are bad. It does all the door openers, it does the buttons, the safety eyes, all that stuff. It's all inclusive of the entire door system. So if we have a back panel that's rusted out or dented or just needs to be replaced, that's all inclusive in this package.
For the 30,000. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief Trommer. Any other questions? Councilor Page?
Not for the fire department, but I just didn't understand, Ms. Murphy, the comment about the offset for the reserve.
So in last year, oh, you meant the reserve, the 40,000?
The 40,000, I just didn't
Okay,
understand.
the 40,000, when we get to revenue,
Yep.
there's rental income in there that offsets
I got
expense.
you. Okay, I just want to make
Yep.
sure I understood that.
A
Thank
coming
you.
teaser again. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next section is Public Works. You're going to see a lot of the similar projects to last year. We're requesting funds for the same kinds of project, but we adjusted the amounts a little. You'll see that we didn't include any money this coming year for drainage improvements. But that's because we're going to be using some of the American Rescue funds to do drainage projects. You also see that the increasing amount for the grant matching funds. I think it's important to maybe even look, and I think Gary can answer some questions on this, to maybe potentially increasing that as we get money out there to do different projects, free money. We've got to have our portion to do the design work, sometimes out of house and stuff like that. So that might be an area to look at. So as you're seeing here, similar to last year, we have local bridge and dam inspection maintenance for $75,000. We had the road resurfacing for $1.5 million. The roads, the proposed roads, if you want to see those, they're on page 32 of this book. It's Appendix C1. The public building resurfacing program for $150,000. Sidewalk pavers and curb maintenance for $300,000. Sidewalk improvements, this is a crossover for $30,000. Elm Hill Business District streetscape for $275,000. Drainage and maintenance for $50,000. The matching grant fund that we mentioned for $225,000. Stonewall repair for $50,000. Flood control system maintenance for $40,000. Ms4 compliance for $80,000. And then the traffic signal repair and replacement reserve for $55,000. And if you have Gary up here, Furstenberg, to answer any of your questions.
Hi, Gary, welcome. Councilor Page.
Hi, good morning. A couple of questions. One is the bridge repair. I know that on a statewide basis and nationally, bridges are in scary bad shape. What standards do we use to make sure that I know we don't have as many bridges and they're not as high, but nonetheless, what standards do we use to make sure that we're meeting safety standards and keeping everyone safe as they cross over them?
Basically inspected on a routine basis.
Okay.
The DOT inspects some of the bigger bridges in town, and then the town we're left to inspects some of the smaller bridges. And what they call a bridge, you and I might not think of as a bridge. Essentially, a culvert would be considered a bridge in many situations. Say like the little culvert up on Robbins Avenue, just east of Willard Avenue. That would be considered a bridge, although it's a 6 foot wide culvert.
Okay.
The culvert out here on Garfield Street. Fortunately, that one's less than 10 years old, and we just got the first inspection this year. But most of our bridges they're in fair to better condition.
Okay.
We don't have these big spectacular bridges like you see on other parts of the country, but we're in a good position at this time.
And any of those bridges or culverts, et cetera, that are on state roads, we don't spend a nickel on that, or do we share cost of that?
No, those are the state takes care of those, just like they take care of the the plowing, they take care of the traffic signals, the resurfacing. That's all on the state. The two town-owned bridges that we really are real bridges is the Dowd Street Bridge, and then the one on North Main Street as you go north of Stoddard. So those are the two real bridges, conventional bridges, as we might think of them as bridges.
Great.
They're not culverts.
Thank you. And then just one other question, if I may. I was pleased to see the Elm Hill Business District streetscape. And is that 275K? Is that okay? I see the total is 1.630 to complete that.
Essentially, yes, that's what the numbers are showing. I was just going to mention to Janet that we can maybe use that on what I call the North End Business District too. I think we could lump them into like streetscape projects. Is what I was going to suggest that we do.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why I was raising this, because I'm so pleased to see the Elm Hill project moving forward. I was wondering about Stoddard, the north side.
To me, we're managing them together.
Okay.
We went out to bid for the professional services. Again, going to jump down to matching grants. I mean, we can basically chew up all that matching grant fund with professional services for one project.
Maybe it's a technicality, and I'm new at this. So can we include that north side or the Stoddard project in the actual budget? Can we write that in?
I mean, I'm managing them together. I
Okay,
have
so
two separate RFPs out for professional services. They'll be designed separately and then they would be bid separately.
Okay.
I would anticipate using this money for the street saver project for the actual construction. I'd anticipate using the matching grant fund money for the actual professional services.
Okay.
Like for a lot of these grants, it's either the town has to provide themselves or hire a consultant to prepare the design. Yeah. And then other grant type funds it's typically an 80-20 match. So say, when you talk to me, a lot of my jobs, a lot of these construction projects, I say we're starting at $1 million. So 20% of $1 million is $200,000 and we're funding $200,000, a year. So I mean, we're just barely there. I mean, I see a lot of, funding opportunities come from the federal government and, they start at $5 million. So the town's match is $1 million. I mean, I don't even waste my time, applying for grants of that nature because we're never going to get there. At least the next 5 years.
Right.
But
The new infrastructure bill, which I talked to Gary about there's a lot of work on bridges and stuff. So we have some money there, but those are usually, I think, 80-20 grants so we have to come up with 20%. So that's why when I talk about the match and grant fund, that might be an area we consider increasing.
correct.
Thank you.
I mean, and we just started that matching grant fund as seed money. 2 years ago at 25,000.
Just last year.
It was just last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, fabulous. We got 50,000. So that's how we're just trying to, plant the seed and get this thing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Donahue?
There was, and I may be confusing this, but I thought was there a grant in place for the Elm Hill?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
but
No, there's a grant for both of them actually.
Okay.
For both the north and the south business
Okay.
districts.
Thank you.
Rodrigo?
Yes, under sidewalk improvements, overpasses on the Berlin Turnpike and Cedar Street.
Yes.
My conception of an overpass might be, what do you mean by overpasses?
Essentially like a pedestrian bridge.
So these are 7 new bridges we're gonna be building?
Oh, no.
These
This
are
is
sort of long range planning. I mean, I have a sidewalk plan that I'm working with. I'll be working with the planning department and, making this more finalized, the sidewalk plan that I have throughout town, but it includes like 15 miles of new sidewalk throughout town, on major streets. And we're not putting sidewalks on every side street around town. But again, it's like, the sidewalk gap on Main Street down there, there's your sidewalk gaps all throughout town. There's, on Maple Hill Avenue, the sidewalks on this side, but not that side. And then you have to cross and you're crossing the road 3 times just to go straight. Putting people at risk crossing the roads like that. It's kind of crazy. But so I got like 15 miles of sidewalks throughout town. And it includes, Cedar Street carries about 30,000 vehicles a day. The Berlin Turnpike carries 40,000 to 45,000 vehicles a day. These are just not pedestrian friendly roads at all. So I do have like 3 or 4 pedestrian overpasses on each of those roads is part of the plan. It's not etched in stone, but I mean, there are pedestrians and that kind of traffic volume just don't mix. I mean, I can tell you the DOT, they've got projects to increase through traffic on those roads. That's what you see happening out there right now. Is they're replacing all the signals. They're putting fiber optic cable in, and these are I forget the CCTS, something like that. It's the connected traffic signal program is what it is, and they'll all be talking to each other. They'll be using like the artificial intelligence where they will know the signals will know that you are coming, via receivers on the road, via your cell phone, via your GPS tracker. It will know when vehicles are coming. What they're trying to do is they're trying to anticipate when you get there that the light is green. That they want more people to arrive on the green versus a whole wave of cars coming and arriving on a red. So they're trying to increase the through traffic. Got a little sidetracked, but I mean, with them trying to increase the through traffic, that's less. It's becoming less and less pedestrian friendly, despite the fact that you see out there they are putting in push buttons and crosswalks. But,
So
those
this is-
roads, go ahead.
This is planning, it's not, this is to facilitate the planning, but any kind of changes or modifications would come to the council.
Council and the DOT. Oh yeah, there's way more. Again, this is sort of like seed money for these projects. I mean, each bridge is gonna cost a couple $1,000,000. I mean, so we're funding at what, it's number 30,000. Again, it's seed money, just so we can start that conversation.
And this overall, you said 15 miles of sidewalk as well, that's.
Correct.
Okay. Oh gosh, wait a second. So, will that also include the studies bikeability as well as pedestrian?
Not sure what we really have for bikeability studies, but I mean, we have included, I do have bike routes, as I presented to town council back in December. So, it's the bike route plan. Again, that can be further coordinated with the planning department too and TP&Z.
Because some of the construction might over,
Oh, absolutely.
or whatever.
No, I would think they could go hand in hand. I wouldn't differentiate, between the two of them.
Okay. Also, I was just wondering, wasn't like a year or two, or I don't know, like time flies. Wasn't there a grant for doing sidewalks between Churchill and
Yes.
where Price Chopper is?
Yes.
What's the?
Here's the story on that. We've been wildly successful at obtaining grants. They won't give us any more grant money until we spend the money we have.
Oh, okay.
So
That's a good
again, which is why we need the matching grant money.
Okay.
They won't give us any more money until we spend the money that they've given us. The money they've given us was for Garfield Street, and we're in the process of doing that. That's going to be we're gonna have to go out for a bid on that very soon too for professional services. So we can spend that money, so we can get the money for do the next job down the road.
Doing it, Gary. You're doing a good job.
We're doing it.
Yeah. Counselor Page?
Yeah, I would just echo that, Counselor Pedreco. I think this is fantastic, and I think it's on the heels of your excellent comments, Counselor, about and our collective concerns about pedestrian-friendly Newington. And there's an article in the Hartford Current this morning about pedestrian deaths, and so I think, and it's all coming back to me. December 14th, it was a very long meeting, and you presented a lot of data about all these projects, and so I think it's good for our quality of life and our pedestrian and resident safety. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Counselor Nagel?
I want to thank you for bringing up when Councilor Pedreco talked about sidewalks and so on. The lighting on the Berlin Turnpike and the elements of controlling traffic, but you can't do anything about pedestrians. Obviously, with that, I've been trying to get someone to come in here from the council for numerous times to talk to us about it, and you clarified some of the things that I had wished that we had known about sooner. So I thank you for that. Those bridges, what are they planned as being? I realize this is not something that's come to reality. Is it the kind that we see in other large municipalities that go up and over major roads with handicapped access ramps and stairs and that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna ask you where, because that's another pie in the sky.
Not really stairs, because they're not really handicap accessible. It'd be ramps, and maybe stairs in some cases where you have both. But I mean, when I first mentioned this to the town managers, like, keeps aware of the overpass in Hartford by Riverside Park. It's not really a very attractive structure at all. And I said, well, time out. So I've got photographs of other these overpasses that are much more attractive. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. We've got it's a very bicycle friendly community. They've got a lot of very attractive pedestrian bridges there. So those are that's what I imagine. So if you go look on some of the newer pedestrian overpasses, that's what I envision.
It's good also that you are trying to, with these monies, to have sidewalks on major roads on one side of the street as opposed to crossing over. Because I know, especially on Maple Hill, I go all the time. There are always elderly people almost every day that I go that route that are walking in the street. And they may not realize it, but it's really a danger for everybody, no matter what the weather happens to be. So thank you.
Yeah. Another one just kind of echoes that, just on Willard Street between right by Club Lemire. And you have to cross Willard Street, then you have to cross New Britain Avenue, then you have to cross Willard Street again. You're crossing 3 state highways to go straight for like 300 feet.
I live in that area, so I'm very aware of that. Thank you.
That's the type of thing that we're trying to make improvements on and correct.
Okay.
Just one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a flashback. You said something about the state is planning to increase vehicle traffic in Newington.
Well, I'm not saying they're planning to increase, they're trying to improve the through flow of traffic.
But in anticipation of more traffic through the town?
They won't tell us that. But I mean, the reality is when I-84 construction happens in Hartford, if and whenever that ever happens, everybody know it happens. Everybody's GPS is going to tell them to come to Newington. That's the practical reality.
As soon as you get information on that in terms of volumes and whatever, because I mean, I do think as a town, we should have some input or at least get some state assistance to pay for the inconvenience of those years of increased traffic. So
I believe we have listed on the agenda coming up, if we can get them DOT to come in and talk about the Turnpike and Cedar. So that might be a really good time to do
It is
that.
part of our agenda request.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is good.
Any other council comment or question? All right, we're all set there. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Development. We have Renata with us here today. Last year, Renata just got here when she was putting together budgets. We had some projects that were proposed. Some of them you'll see on here again this year, and some of them she's refined to propose some different ones. But you'll see the comprehensive revision of the town zoning regulations for $50,000. The Newington Town Center Economic Study and Concept Plan for $150,000. The Transit Village Design Architectural Guidelines for Cedar Street for $100,000. The Transit Village Design Architectural Guidelines for Newington Junction for $50,000. And well, this isn't actually hers, but under here it says land acquisition to open space. That's something we started last year for the $20,000. So I open it up for questions for Renata regarding the plans that she's proposing.
Good morning. Nice to see you all in person. And I wanted to say, Susan, hi. Nice to see you in person too. With her, I've been working for like year and a half, and I've never seen her.
Something, right? Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Oh, I don't know why. It's the way you wear your hair or something. I was wondering who's that woman was. They were on the phone. Anyways, I do have a question on.
Maybe she put a mask on.
Yeah, maybe if you put your mask on.
Yeah. Oh, there she is.
The Transit Village Design District guidelines for Cedar Street. Didn't we have a consultant come in and do a big study several years ago where we spent money on and it
Yes,
just.
you did.
It
Yes, you
wasn't that
did.
long ago.
So here's the deal with that regulation. And as this whole CIP request started by my looking into how we absolutely need money to redo our zoning regulations. We have some really problematic issues with the zoning regulations, and I just don't have enough staff to take on. That's a pretty big deal. As I looked at the zoning regulations, one of the things that I noticed was that that particular section of the regulations was not in the books. And also it was not on my zoning map. So when I then looked and found that regulation, it is a 70-page form-based code, which is written in a true form-based code style by consultants some years back. It's a regulation that goes into a great detail to an extent where it defines, really in a detail, all kinds of things as to how you design a bike lane in that district and how an awning on a building is to be designed. And it's really very, very detailed. It's a 70-page regulation. It includes about 60 acres of property. But in order to actually develop that, there is this very complicated process of land consolidation that has to take place. In order to even start that, there is the first thing that has to happen is somebody has to come in and consolidate that land. And then there are some other things that have to happen. Now, all of that is actually doable and it's included in that regulation. The issue that I see in the regulation itself is that it doesn't include any economic analysis of how much it actually costs to go through that process of land consolidation and how much it's, and then what does that mean with regards to the bulk of development? So we have all these details with regards to, you can have this kind of use and this type of bike lane and, awning, and the buildings can be this high, but they can also be this high and they have to be designed this kind of way. But it doesn't talk about like an actual density, and that density should depend on the amount that's necessary to develop this property. So that part is missing from what was originally included when this regulation was written. So that is why I included that in this particular request. And that's actually a recurring theme that is in my downtown request, in my Newington Junction request, and in this request. The money is different depending on different districts' needs. For example, in Newington Junction, I am requesting less money because Krog is doing a study, and I plan on using that as a baseline, and then I anticipate needing less money because I will kind of tie off of that study and use that as a baseline, and that should then be something that requires less expenditure on our end for somebody. They will have something to start off. With the TVDD zone, it's a larger area, and there is really no study like that has been done. There is a lot of study of economic potential, but no of what it will take to create this.
I know. I mean, it when it came to us and the discussion around it by people at the time, it was almost very site specific. It was almost like a site plan. They were talking about fountains and they were talking about an amusement park and blah, blah, blah. But it generated, because at the fact there was an awful lot of discussion of that a train station was coming, but the vote at the time was not on the train station, but the vote was on the overlay zone, the TVDD zone, as far as I remember it. So like, that's why I remember that the council did vote on it. There was a TVDD zone, but
and this proposal is not really about the train station. This proposal is about the zone. If we want that development to happen there, then I believe that we should really understand how much will it cost to get that put together and get some economic analysis of this compilation of properties. And then what does that mean bulk wise? Like, what will that development then look like? That complemented by this detailed design will give a developer a pretty good idea. We can also sit on it and allow a developer to come in and do that on their own, but then we will be faced with.
So this is an area of potential development with or regardless of whether there's a transit station or some kind of transit attached to it or not. This is an area in town that we want, that possibly somebody can come in and purchase for development, but we want to get a little bit of control over it in terms of what goes there, correct?
I think in order for this district to happen, there will have to be some sort of transit station there. This is dependent on location of transit station. It's called Transit Village. It's written as dependent on some sort of transit opportunity there.
Right, but not on, again, like I'm just trying to get the point across that when we voted on this before, it was for the TVDD overlay zone and development potential there, not voting specifically, it must include a train station.
I don't know. I wasn't here for that, and I don't.
Okay. And this study, though, I guess we're getting in a little bit into the weeds. I just wanted to make sure this wasn't a duplicate of something we had.
It's not a duplicate.
Okay,
No,
thank
it
you.
wouldn't be a duplicate of that.
Counselor Page?
Yeah, thanks. And you've sort of addressed some of my questions. I think that the TVDD was voted on, I know it was, but monies were not allocated for any development or any design. A nickel wasn't spent on that, and that's why you're doing it now.
We had a consultant.
There was a consultant at the time, but I think it was through state or
Right.
CROG or something like that. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and my other question is, so I'm in favor of this and I appreciate you doing this. My other question is, would this impact the existing plans that the previous council and the current town manager and you have worked on for existing plans to develop apartments and other things that are going on over there?
Over where?
On Cedar Street.
Do you mean development that's already in the works?
Yes.
No, this is an independent. This would inform the area, if anything. One of the issues that I observe is that over time we have conducted planning in a way that was not informed in that market in economic sense very well. There was a lot of planning that had happened in Newington that consisted of, let's get the neighborhood together, ask people what they want. Then neighborhoods, a lot of residents would show up and say what they want, but they would literally come in and say, I want an ice cream shop. And then the other person would say, I want a train station. And the third person would say, I want to preserve this parcel. And all of that would end up in some document that wasn't consolidated into something that was practically executable. And none of it was informed with, this is in this part of town, the market demand is for this particular thing right now. And these are kind of income groups in Newington that can support this, and this is what you can realistically expect to happen here, right? So I think a lot of planning was done without this baseline understanding as to what can actually happen. So I think this type of study, even if it's focused just on TVDD district, would inform neighborhoods around, because these things feed what can happen in nearby areas.
Right. And I think two other points, and then I'll stop. I think the only reason that TVDD was discussed was because in 2018, the Hartford line was established and was operational. I think that's what really drove that conversation and vote in 2019. And my understanding from the hard work that Councilor Petrayko and others did on that is that as a result, I think the zoning regulations that were established at the time were a model for other communities. So I think there's a lot that's been done, and I appreciate you continuing to work on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Camillo?
Morning, Renata.
Morning.
Back in 18, Tanya Lane did cut a check for $10,000 for a consultant to come in, and I was on zoning then. So I like what you're doing. Thank you. We're looking at both sides of the town, and good luck.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, move on to the second half, same page, Park and Recreation. Bill DeMayo couldn't be here with us today, so he gave me some notes. I'm gonna go through it for you. If there's any follow-up questions, I of course can contact him and we'll get back to you. These projects they've been previously proposed. These really haven't changed from the previous year, what we're looking for. What you will see is there's some increases in costs, as I mentioned before, and he's looking to do a park a year. We did move one park up and move one park down. You'll notice, you'll see this year Beechwood, and we moved the other one down. I think it was Eagle Park from last year, but I'll go through the list and try to give you some kind of details on this. Clem Lemire Legends field lighting. We started that. That project is in process right now. They have to put in 3 additional poles. The cost this year, we originally were saying we'd need about 150 this year. He's asking for 200. The cost, once they started digging up stuff and putting electrical, increased. So to complete the project, he's looking for 200,000 to put the additional 3 poles in that they need to do. Park, pool, and playground improvements. This is something that we do look for every year. Mainly, a lot of this money goes to the crack ceiling and everything else of the 2 pools and trying to get them open. It also covers some vandalism that happens to our parks. And if any equipment breaks, like if you replace a slide today, Bill say that can, if somebody puts their foot through the slide, that can cost you $4,000 just to replace the slide. The town parks ADA compliant pathways, walkways, and parking. This once again is asked for every year to go around to different parks and try to put in where needed handicap access or even ADA equipment in that area. Synthetic turf replacement reserve. Our turf is 12 years old. It is guaranteed for 8 years. And we're long overdue to probably do something on this. I will tell you that Bill did put in a request for some state bonding money to do as part of this project. I believe it was like 500, a little over 500 that he was requesting, but we'll still need our portion to complete it. And we're going to keep on funding this, of course, every year because you're going to have to replace it. You're supposed to every 8 to 10 years. We're a little over. The last thing down here you'll see is Beechwood Park, playground, rubber surface, and ADA compliant pathways. We did Beacon last year for 275, and he barely got that one done for that. He had to borrow from some other areas to complete that. So this year he did increase the amount with the increased costs of different supplies and materials to 375. And you'll see some of the other parks also, like in 2023-24 at 375. So he's going through every year and doing it. And the reason he moved Beechwood up, just so you know, is because they noticed that of the parks, that was the only one that was totally not ADA compliant. So he's working also with our inside crew, highway and stuff to put in some parking, do some paving over there for them to actually put in some handicap parking and different access also. And that is Parks and Rec.
Counselor Mankey?
Just to go back to synthetic turf replacement reserve, easy for you to say.
Yeah.
We're putting money in this at 50,000 a year. What's the balance now?
Balance. I was going to tell you guys too, if you look on page 28 and 29 of your book, there's a current year balances. Now I've got to find it in the listing. Sorry. This is the tough part of it. Let me see here. I want to say it was somewhere in the $100,000 range. It wasn't that high. Because he also does cleaning and maintenance of it out of this to make sure that we can get it to last a little longer until we replace it. Here it is. Yeah, it's $171,500.
Do we know the cost to replace the field?
I believe he said it's between 800,000 and $1 million.
So are we ever going to get there at this point?
If that's why he's going for the grant. And then if you notice, if you see in the next year, the 2023-24 is a 600,000 because if we don't, we're going to have to do something else.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yeah, Janet, you mentioned, there is vandalism sometime, whatever, at the parks. Do you know if any of this includes any kind of improvements in being able to either monitor or, cameras, better lighting?
I would not know that. And I can ask the police chief also, and we might not want to say where we're sticking cameras.
Exactly, but,
yeah, but I can ask him. Definitely, I can ask.
A problem, as well as litter being so in terms of maintenance and security, if there's any improvements, and you can find that out. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. He just mentioned to me yesterday, like an issue that just came up, and it's over near the skate park in the pavilion. It just graffiti everywhere, and you're just buying paint and fixing it, and
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad because you guys have some beautiful parks.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anyone else? Okay, we're all set with that one.
On the next page is the Board of Ed. Very consistent to the prior year, except for now they have the school bus replacement program included, and that's you'll notice for $488,725 a year. They kind of flatlined it on that one. The school entrance security, we gave them 200,000 last year. They're asking for 200,000 again this year and another 200,000 next year for that total project. And then you'll see the first line, I kind of went from bottom to up, sorry about that, was the appropriation that we're required to give them every year for their school CIP, which is a fund we'll be talking about later, for 125,000.
Janet, is the school, the entrance piece, the security piece, is it for specific schools? Is it a general fund to address many?
I don't believe, let me just find what they submitted. I don't believe they listed which schools. I think it's in total.
I'm just wondering if this is something that is intended to address security issues at specific schools, or if this is just an ongoing.
No, I don't think it's ongoing. I think they're looking at all the schools. And I mean, because I remember a couple of years ago, they did do at one school, like they did the, they call it the box area, and they approved that with some money, the surplus that they had at the end of the year. So I think they're looking by using this to do all of them, because they don't have this in their school CIP. So I'm believing they're thinking for the 600,000, they can do all the schools, but I will double check on that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they have a list of kind of, if they've completed certain ones and there's more to go, or how they're kind of addressing that, if we could get more information.
Yep.
Thank you. Counselor Page.
Thank you. Over the years, there have been questions about buses and replacement of buses and the number of school buses in Newington. Do we, or can we get data? Does it exist on the numbers of buses relative to the student population, relative to when some go into disrepair, what those requirements are? I'd like to see that.
I do have a list of how many buses we have, because they sent that to us last year, so I can definitely get that. And I think when the Board of Ed comes on Tuesday night, you can kind of ask them regarding their, because they kind of maintain that themselves regarding repairs.
Just so we can have a transparent discussion of the data and yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Yep.
Counselor Donahue.
So this means there are no buses in the Board of Education budget?
As far as I know.
Okay, well, I mean, it always seems that there mysteriously appears to be buses in their budget as well. I'm hoping that we'll have to go through the
Question for Tuesday night, because as far as I know, no, they should be all included. Their full replacement, I believe, is supposed to be planned here.
Okay.
Yeah, traditionally, we've seen oftentimes that money's become available either through surplus or health benefits, or whenever they get some kind of a bulk money, it doesn't typically come back to the general fund. They find ways to spend, and oftentimes
there has been
bus purchases.
Every year, usually purchases done out of their operating budget. Last year, we didn't give them money for buses, and they did purchase some through their operating budget.
Which is what we're trying to avoid by going this route.
Yes.
Counselor Nagel?
Yes, just to make certain I'm clear about it. I know that they used to put buses in the town CIP, which of course was rejected, for lack of a better word, a few years ago, when before we've gone to the new system for CIP coming directly to us. This program is on their part a replacement for what used to happen that went on CIP where it shouldn't have been, or is this something else entirely different?
They've always asked through here. We just haven't funded it. And they've been reviewing the replacement cycle now that they have a new person in charge of their bus transit. So this is it being interesting, because like last year, we were trying to move the buses over to the equipment reserve where we replace all our equipment. That didn't go through. So now they're putting it through here. They said they didn't need any money last year for buses, that they were good. So now I think they're reapplying it to here again, to back to where it was.
So this program has always been there, but they just didn't utilize it, and
we
monies were
didn't fund
taken,
it.
tried to be taken from other places. Is that true?
We didn't fund it. I don't think we haven't funded it the last couple of years. Last year is because they said that they didn't need any, and I'm not sure about the year before. That was the year, last year we had the CIP committee.
So this is where they're requesting as
where
a
they have in the
need, as
past.
opposed to trying to get the monies from somewhere else. And of course, the whole idea of our looking at whether buses are needed or not is a whole different subject matter.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Janet, can we get information from them? Is it possible on how many buses were purchased last year? Because I remember the discussion, at least in my, and sometimes especially with COVID, the years are blending, but my recollection was that we didn't fund it because we were told that the replacement cycle, they were shifting to like 14 years instead of 11 or something. And so we didn't fund it, but then there were buses purchased through operational. So I guess my question for them when they come on Tuesday is going to be around if they spent, for example, the figure that's in our budget now, 400,000 roundabout. If they spent 400,000 on buses out of operational, that money is still built into their current budget, but not allocated for that if it's allocated here. So that's 400,000. What is that being used for? Will be my question. But if we could find out how much.
We actually can, because we record all the fixed assets. So
Okay.
we do have a list of that in our office, and I can get that to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Counselor Menke.
So just to clarify, this is the only place that buses should be purchased out of in an accounting perspective. It should
Correct.
be purchased out of their operating budget.
Correct. It's much easier to see it here because then it goes through our CIP that we pay the bills on. And so when we have to record fixed assets, we don't have to call upstairs and say, hey, how many buses did you buy out of operational? Because we don't see that detail.
So just to be, not that they would, but they shouldn't purchase buses out of this CIP and then also purchase buses out of operating expense, because then we're purchasing
Correct.
more buses than we're planning for.
Correct.
Okay. And I know buses is a hot topic, but
Always.
that's right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we're all set there. Thank you.
Okay, the last thing you'll see down here is equipment replacement reserve. This is where we put all of the town equipment. We put away every year a percentage of the depreciation of all the equipment on our listing, so we can replace it when it gets to end of life use. And this is also where we do lease purchases. And I'll be going through the equipment reserve in the back, so I won't go into detail on this now, but you'll get to see all the listings and which equipment we're going to be replacing for each department. Now I'm going to flip you to the really exciting debt that's in the front of your book. So if you go to page 7. This is table 2. This lists out for you all of the current debt that we've issued.
Oh.
CIP.
Yeah. Page 7, right?
Yes, page 7. Table 2 that we're currently, we have, as of right now, $24,485,000 worth of principal debt bonds outstanding. By the end of this fiscal year, as of June 30th, we'll have $22,620,000. The last principal payment gets made in the June timeframe. This, as I said, this table only reflects your current outstanding debt. So you're going to see that come the years 2025, the refunding for the some of the education facilities and the police station will be paid off. And the only thing besides those 2 projects is the current town hall project that we went out to bond for. It gives you we've been pretty conservative, and I know it's scary when you get up into the, oh yeah, it's not, I'm saying it's not a lot to be in the 20 million, but compared to other towns, that really, we've been very fiscally conservative with how we go out, when we go out to bond, because we have this really great CIP project to avoid us to have to go out to debt for stuff like that. Mm-hmm. If you flip to the next page, this is our future look. So I did make some small changes from last year. You'll see we haven't completely gone out to bond to refund ourselves for the town hall money that we reimburse ourselves for the town hall money that we expended for this building. We can't really go out to finish that bonding until the state gives us the grant for the Transition Academy and the Board of Ed. We haven't gotten that money yet. I know that the Board of Ed is looking into it. I talked to them. They submitted the paperwork for reimbursement like last spring. We're not sure what's going on. I believe the Board of Ed's having a meeting with them to see what the status is and what's going on. But we can't go out to bond for more than the resolution says. And once your resolution says, like the 28 million, we have to then take the money off that we got reimbursed from the state And that's the total amount we can go out to bond. So I can't officially finish going out to bonding on this town hall until I know how much the state's exactly going to give us. Right now, it's estimated to be about 1.5 million. We had 4 million that we haven't gone out to bond. So you'll see now I have 2.5 million as the amount to reimburse the town for the expenditures for town hall left to go out to bond. I have that down to go out with the first bonding for Anna Reynolds. The Board of Ed gave me their cash flow for that project, and we're going to go out for the first bonding next June. So I'm trying to put it off a little. It's good and bad because we don't know what the interest rates are going to be. If you notice from the page before, the interest rates that we got on some of this bonding were like, I mean, the last time we went out was 1.88. We're not going to get that again.
Not anymore.
So you'll notice on these, we're projecting maybe 3.5. So we're trying to stay in the conservative area. Anna Reynolds, as I said, we'll have 2 bondings, one next June and then June of 2024. You'll see that the cost for debt has gone up this year, $305,138. That's due to the fact, if you see that column where it says the offset for available premium, we've been using that. So when you go out to bond, they give you premium that you can put towards your interest payments. We haven't gone to bond in a couple of years now, and that premium that we'd collected from the last time we went to bond has been used up. It's gone away. When I asked you for the mid-year transfers for the 448.5, that's this amount right here to help reimburse this. It's the $30 million amount that originally the study long before I got here that we went, that the total you wanted to be out for debt for bond. That's not going to be realistic with all the projects we have going on, including, I mean, just Anna Reynolds will put you over that. As you see, there's a total debt outstanding on the side. That total debt outstanding, just so you know, you'll see it says 42,870. That's all the debt that we're projecting that we haven't gone out for yet. And it goes down, but you don't get down to under 30 million just with Anna Reynolds till like 2029. So there are some challenges. There are the list of projects on the bottom, and they're all in alphabetical order. So we're not giving any favoritism. It's all alphabetical. We've made that very clear. But the projects that are still hanging out there that people are asking for funds for are like the firehouse radio system replacement, the firehouse 3 and 4. So the firehouse system replacement, that might come off the list with what Paul's projecting now.
Right.
But the firehouse 3 and 4, as they said, they can't fit their equipment now in their trucks in the bays. Flood control system dredging, John Wallace wing renovation. That is a project that the Board of Ed put in their CIP as one of their projects they're looking to do. Library improvements, and the Newington High School turf field and track resurfacing. And last, the park improvements, which includes the 2 pools.
Councilor Page?
I'm trying to get some reference points for understanding the concept of the bonding. So I get philosophically the way we handle money, we want to be conservative and responsible for our taxpayers. And if you can't answer this right now, or if it's not, I'm not framing it right, you'll help me, I hope, or at another date. For each million, let's say, that we bond, how does that affect the mill rate and the per household expenditure relative to that increase?
So
Or
it
does
would
it not
depend.
work that way?
It would depend. And then I can kind of do this. I'll give you an example the next time I come down, because there's when before we go out to referendum for a bonding project, we do this analysis, and I can kind of share with you and send with you the one that we did for Anna Reynolds, and it will show the effect on your mill rate. But it contains such things as, okay, I'm going out for $1 million, let's say, what's the interest rate? Then you got to add the interest rate in there, and how does that compare to our current mill rate? And like a total mill, 1 mill is about $2.7 million. So the combination of your interest rate and the terms, is it 15 years, is it 20 years, will all affect how that will.
So that was one question, as it affects each household, median household.
We do that analysis before they go to referendum.
And the other question, and maybe that's part of what you just referenced, which is, how does that affect also as a town, our bond rating and our standing relative to our ability to leverage borrowed monies for projects? and so
So every time before we go out to bond, we have to do a call with Standard and Poor's, and they meet with us, and there's a lot of things that they evaluate about the town. The amount of debt being one of them, but equally important is your economic development.
Yep.
So are you solely relying on residential? You're solely relying on business? Are you a mix? How are you handling your budgets? How are you handling, they don't like to see too often additional special appropriations unless there's a really good reason for it. And if you're doing a special appropriation, they'd like to see that you're doing it something for infrastructure or some kind of improvement. They don't want to see that you're doing it because you didn't budget correctly. Those things are some of the things you go through. And then they ask you questions like, right before when we went before the pandemic, if this pandemic hits, how are you managerially planning to control expenses and make it through this? And they evaluate you on all those things. Going out from debt, I would not affect. They were actually looking if we had enough economic development to bump us up. We weren't quite there.
rating?
Yes.
I see.
So going out for a little more debt, I would not adversely, I think, affect our rating to bring it down. It takes a lot for them to bring down your rating.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Janet, I had spoken with the chairman of the Town Hall Reno Commission this week, and he indicated that they had a meeting with the state, he and Lou.
I hadn't heard the results, yeah.
Yeah, it sounded positive, so, yeah, his indication was that it took some time and that there was a mix-up with the paperwork on the state's end, not on our end, but that it looks like it was gonna.
Lou gave it to me, and I knew when he sent it in, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at this bonding, and I'm like, hey, Lou.
Yeah, he said that the state lost the paperwork, so then I was pretty nervous.
Go figure.
But after talking with him this week, he said that it was a favorable outcome, so hopefully.
And I can tell you for the Anna Reynolds project, like for the town hall project, we waited till the end and they submitted everything. For Anna Reynolds, they can't do that because we're only kind of funding half of the project. So for the Anna Reynolds project, they'll be seeking reimbursement from the state throughout the project. So which is a good thing. So that will help our cash flow and be able to hold off us going to bonding for a little bit. So,
okay.
Yes, debt, always exciting, I know. All right, and then we go down to equipment reserve. So equipment reserve is page 39 in the back, towards the back of your book. Kind of in the back of the book where we're showing the money coming in and then the proposed expenditures for the 22-23 fiscal year. We're looking at spending equipment purchases of $937,142, along with a lease payment of $177,424. That's a new fire truck lease that we just got this year. So that's a total proposed expenditures of $1,114,566. If you look at that, we'd have been having problems in the equipment reserve because we hadn't been putting in enough money in the full amount of depreciation to try to cover all our expenditures, or we're moving equipment up that was more than we expected expenditure wise. You're going to see some equipment, the prices rise in this. And so what we bought it for this and we're depreciating it, we're replacing it at a much higher cost right now. But if you look, you'll see the ending reserve balance was only $14,970. That's low. We were worried about this year with what we have planned and the way we approached it last year. We should end 2022-23 with a $319,726 balance and continue to keep it up in a good balance till we actually get to 2026-27. These are all projections. We never know what the equipment's going to cost us, but we try to make sure the funding's there to do it. If you flip to the next page, you'll see that general government, what we're looking to replace. So if you're looking, this is confusing, I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to have Lisa, my deputy, change this next year. If you look at where it says 2022 in the far right-hand corner, the vehicles to replace, that's actually the 2022-23 fiscal year. And that's what we're talking about for the budget for next year. And for general government, we're only replacing one piece of equipment, and that's a Ford Explorer. Yeah, go ahead.
Menke?
Just so I'm clear, if we replace this Explorer, we're selling the Explorer? We aren't?
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times we replace the equipment, but we use it for we keep it on the fleet. and
So
we
if
use it for
you
something else.
look down to the bottom, those ones that don't have like annual depreciation, those are the
ones
kinds we kind of use and we
we've
move
used it for
around.
something
Yes,
else? Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
So the ones you'll see depreciation ones amount to, you'll see annual depreciation that we're putting in and funding each year. Those are the ones that are on the replacement list.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Donahue?
So why aren't we taking a 2013 Ford Explorer and replacing a 2003 or a 2008 with it?
I'm sorry.
I mean, the department, building department, they have a 2008 Ford Explorer, and we're gonna get rid of a 2013.
Okay, there's no depreciation amount, so they're kind of using those for like fleet vehicles, as in other purposes.
Janet?
Is Rob on?
Yes. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sure can, go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so what the plan is, Councilor Donahue, is that 2013 will move down to that list where the vehicles have all been depreciated. And one of those vehicles, the older vehicles that has reached its lifespan and it's not used one more, or it's too expensive to maintain, will be sent to auction. So that 13 will not be replaced. It'll just be moved down and used as basically a secondary vehicle for either building or the senior center or something like that.
That was my question. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Counselor Page?
Thanks, Mayor. The question on page 39 about the equipment purchase under less proposed equipment expenditure for 937,142, that's a fire truck?
No. That's all the equipment you'll see on all these pages I'll go
Oh,
through.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So like when I told you the Ford Explorer for the 42, that's part of that makes up the.
And forgive me in advance. Did we discuss fire trucks yet?
We're gonna get to fire.
Okay. Thank you.
You like the teasers, I know. Fire's the next page after general government.
Loves his fire truck.
But Janet, the 177,424 is the lease payment for
That's
the
the lease
aerial.
payment, yes.
Yep, for
That
the
we
aerial
have not,
Texas
we're
too.
still waiting to receive.
We haven't taken possession.
No, we have
Still
not.
being.
Yeah, yeah, but you gotta pay for it ahead of time. They won't. Yeah, well, we paid for half of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next page is the police department. And you'll see, once again, if you go to that 2022, the Ford Taurus for $34,819 and a Harley motorcycle for $32,000. We also, last year, we started, it used to be that we had the cruisers in the operational budget. We moved them over to here. So on the bottom of the page, you'll see where it says patrol, the 3 patrol vehicles for $61,971 apiece.
Are these cars or SUVs?
These are SUVs.
Okay, we're sticking with that.
Yep.
Any questions? Counselor Page?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't take my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's, I'm trying to write notes and
No,
keep
you're doing
track, so I
everything.
apologize.
I should have done.
Counselor Menke?
So just the same thing, we'll move the oldest one down and sell one of the.
Yeah, and sometimes like these, last year when we had some of them, and Rob can chime in this one too. Like remember we talked about the fire and the deputies getting vehicles.
Right.
Some of these vehicles got refurnished and give to them, so we no longer paying gas allowance. So sometimes stuff like that will have, or they'll be down here as Rob had mentioned before.
But to Councilor Donahue's point, if we're trading in a 2014 Ford Taurus, we're gonna trade in instead one of the
Yes.
older ones, the 2011
Yes.
Ford Taurus, right? And just kind of swap them up.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're good.
Okay. Fire department. We've got down nothing for this coming year. We're still waiting to get that one fire engine. But if you'll see in the 23, so it's 23, 24 year, there is the dash pumper engine 2 for 183,911. So they can start looking at that and working on that, and we'll be ready to go out to during the 22, 23 year, they can do their planning, do their specs, get everything in place. With the plan that we will get leasing funding in place in the 23, 24 year.
Okay. Any questions? All right, we're good.
The next page is highway. And highway has a sweeper for $241,100, a dump truck for $235,980, and a Ford F-450 for $60,389.
You're still there, yeah. Quick question. I had a resident ask why we still sweep our streets if we're using salt or chemical versus sand. And I know, like, I'm thinking just in terms of aesthetics and making sure that we're getting everything off the street, but what's your perspective on that?
Well, as Gary can attest to this too, it's part of our MS4 permit that we have to sweep the street. So that's one of the, but if you drive around the streets now, you'll see all the road debris that's on the side of the roads. That's eventually going to end up in the catch basins. Those catch basins run into our waterways. So not only is it the right thing to do, but aesthetically, with the litter and the trash that's on the side of the roads, it's something that I think we should continue to do. Not only because of the MS4 permit, but because it's aesthetically, it's not going to look good if we don't.
Yeah, we can.
Well, that's a good point too, with the catch basins and waterways. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Mankey?
Councilor Page and I want to know what an MS4 permit is.
It's and I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's basically the maintenance of waterways and catch basins. We have to clean our catch basins, sweep our streets, monitor our outfalls. It's for the betterment of our waterways.
Okay, thank you.
And if you remember under Public Works, he did have money in there for MS4 compliance.
Right.
So he's also have to go out, he has to do testing at different sites and stuff like that to make sure that what we're doing is compliant.
Thank you.
Good memory, Mary.
Okay.
I'd forgotten that one.
Yeah. I didn't respond to that resident at the time. Make sure we hear it on record. Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
MS4 is called a small municipal, there's a 4, separate storm sewer systems permit.
Wow.
Oh.
MS4 sounds like it should be a James Bond one.
It does. It does.
For a game.
Okay.
And the last one under equipment service parks. And next year, Parks has expected to replace a Chevy Silverado for $58,743 and a Silverado with a lift gate and a plow for $46,000.
And just because I've only bought an occasional vehicle myself at a dealership, is it assumed that because we buy at a larger quantity and so forth, that there set rates for municipal purchases?
A lot of this are under state contract. I know the police vehicles are definitely under state
So they don't
contract.
just hold our keys while they talk to the manager.
Yeah.
There's an actual
process, yeah.
agreed upon.
Let me go talk to my man.
Yeah, let me talk to the judge.
I just had to ask because these,
Haggle back and forth.
I didn't
like
know
we
how
do.
that happened. So, okay, thank you.
Yep. Are you good, Councilor Donahue?
Yeah, I
Okay.
hit the wrong button.
Okay. All right.
That's all I have in our CIP blue book.
That was fun.
Ta-da.
Recess.
Recess.
Yeah.
For Carol.
I would like to do a 5-minute recess quickly, just before we begin the town budget side.
Oh, absolutely.
So 5-minute recess. All right, we stand in recess at 10:39. Can you mute mics, please, Mr. Okay, we're going live. Mics are hot. All right, folks, we are back in session at 10:49, a little longer than we anticipated. And we are going to begin our next section of budget review with the revenues. All right, Janet, it's all yours.
This is always a good discussion this year. That's a positive. If you've gotten to the revenue pages, the first page that you'll see is taxes, and you'll see current levies going up. That is not.
Just what page are we?
There's no numbers, it's the general revenues.
Yeah, if you go to the blue section where it says revenues, and then.
Appropriations, hang on, just give me a sec.
There you go, right
General
there.
fund
Yep.
revenues, I got you. I didn't mark that one yesterday.
Tabs, Tim.
I didn't tab that one for some reason. I was watching Jeopardy while I was doing it. So.
Everybody's good?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
The current year levies are going up, but that's not due to any increase in anybody's taxes. That's due to a 2.5 increase in the net grand list that we're seeing right now, which is a great story to say. All the other revenues where you see under taxes, we left flat to the current year budget. Pilot money. This is the next section. This is actually the story that I was telling you when we were talking about where we were in the current year for revenue. This current year, the pilot program from the state got changed. They ended up taking away the state-owned pilot program and the tax-exempt colleges and hospitals and replacing it with this tiered pilot program.
Right.
That increase was, if you'll see right here, you'll see we're now going to get same thing as we got this year, 3.7 million compared to under 2 million that we were originally budgeted for this year. So that is a great story. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing revenue surplus this year. How long this will last, I don't know, but I think this was in response to you guys talking to our representatives and saying you exempt all these properties, but you don't fully give us more than we should be to get reimbursed. And I think this was their answer, a little answer, and it's a good thing.
We'll take it. Yeah.
We'll take it. On the next page, you'll see the new Meadow Housing. That is the assessment that is taxes in lieu that we do collect the town directly from that group, and that is flat to what our current estimate is for the end of the year. When we're talking during operational budgets, I mentioned to you during license and permits for building and for planning that I'm looking to increase the number here to try to also offset an increase that I'm proposing on the operational side that's not included in your current budget for inspections, either consultants or part-time people to do the inspections, building inspections, and a lot of these new developments going on. So the first thing under license and permits is the building permits. I sat down and talked to the building director, and he got a better idea of when we expect to collect some of these fees. I originally left it flat to the current year's budget, but that can be increased to what we're estimating for this year. So I'm proposing that this number of 325 be adjusted up to 400,000. Because he's seeing those going to start coming in the summer and continue through the year. But then I'm also suggesting that on the expenditure side, we put some money in outside consultant or part-time under building for them to be able to hire consultants or part-time people to do these inspections. Because right now they have two full-time staff, and that's it. And that's just keeping up with the regular building inspections that are going on. And these projects are going to require a lot of work. All other areas under here, I kept flat to the current year budget. Along with the same thing in the next area, the rentals. Now, where you see that the town hall rental, we haven't really been renting it out yet. So we haven't been collecting anything because we haven't been open. But I'm hoping this coming year we will actually start renting it out again, like we did the old town hall.
Janet, you've mentioned a few times different things that you would recommend adjustments in. Can you compile a list for us? Okay.
After I finish today, what I'll do is the next meeting, I'll have James send out to all of you
Okay.
that list.
For consideration. Great, thank you.
Because I think you also asked me at the last meeting to give you some costs for things that weren't included, including the grant writer and the assistant town manager. So I have those answers that I can also give you.
Excellent, thank you.
Interest earning, I keep on hoping they'll go up. They're, they're not great. Yes.
Just one question, under rental, if Parks and Rec rentals show up under Parks and Rec, correct?
Under their enterprise fund.
And Indian Hill Country Club rental, can you explain that?
That's the contract we have. I mean, we own it. So they operate it and they pay us monthly rent.
Okay, thank you.
What about other town properties?
The other town properties, that's the tower income that we receive mainly in that one.
Okay.
So, as I said, interest earning, I'm gonna leave it at 100,000, knocking on wood, hoping that things go up a little. We did see a little shift up in a couple of our accounts this past month, so here's hoping that it goes back up again.
And those instruments that the money is involved in, that's bearing that 100,000, are those, what are the vehicles?
Regulated, we get only certain ones we can invest our general fund in.
I see.
So basically a lot of it is in right now in regular banking accounts, in the state investment fund, STIF. And then we have an amount that I think about 5 million that we invest with an investment company where they're only allowed to invest in certain safe vehicles.
Safe instrument. Okay, thank you.
The next area, the fines, that's stayed flat to this current year's budget.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Okay, I'm just kind of curious. It looks like we're not getting any revenue for zoning citations, snow removal fines, littering. We just don't go after that?
We haven't collected any in my office. I don't know what the operational plan is on that. I can ask. I know the big push was originally on blighted premises, and we did start collecting on that. Before we didn't used to be collecting anything. I mean, literally nothing. So the other areas, snow removal fines.
Littering.
We did have a little, you see the year before, there was nothing this year. I don't know if there's been a significant amount of snow for us to actually go out and have to find anybody this year so far.
There's a significant amount of litter, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of litter.
So, I mean, that's a question I will have Keith address with you guys, how he plans on approaching that. Yeah. All right. On the next page, as I mentioned with the building permits, I'm also going to be mentioning with town planning and zoning. We have them estimated for 25,000. I just increased them a little, but after talking to Renata, I think that amount that we can estimate for proposed for revenue for next year should be more like 30,000. And then have somebody to offset. This is once again something I'll send to you guys as proposed changes to try to help with some of the updating some of the zoning issues within her office. I did bump up James' town clerk fees because he's coming in at 700,000. So what I did do is kind of look at an average for 5 years, and I just increased that to 500,000. I don't want to be too aggressive with it, but it does need to say that he's definitely collecting more than we always budget for him.
Thank you, James.
Everything else kind of stayed steady to the current budget year. Not many changes on that. Refunds for the town. We always usually keep this at the same budgeted amount, except for I reduced the recycling rebates because I don't think we're going to be seeing those next year. So that was the only change in that area. And the sale of town property stayed the same. The other, just so you know, so if we have any equipment that we do sale through auction and stuff like that, this is where you see the revenue come in. Large equipment, if we sell that, that goes back into the equipment reserve. It doesn't go in here. But if we have, some kind of small equipment that gets sold, this is where you'll see the revenue from it. Some years it'll be higher than others, so we try to just keep it on the low side, and if we get something extra, great.
Counselor Page?
Just a small question about the human services counseling fee, and maybe Carol, Ms. LeBrecq, when she presents, can address it later. It seems like that number is lower, potentially could be higher. I don't know if that's from out-of-pocket fees and insurance, or is it just out-of-pocket fees from folks?
So during COVID, do you want me to respond now?
Yeah, you can come on.
Can you get to the microphone, though?
Come
Sorry.
on.
Bless you.
I feel blessed.
Bless you.
During COVID, we didn't charge people for those fees. We did a lot of, telehealth and virtual counseling. And so thus the reduction. We also had a 6-month period where our clinical position was vacant. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Thank
If you want to stay, you can, because I'm going to be done soon. We're going to come back up. So you can make yourself comfortable.
You got a desk now.
On the next page, it's the state aid page. Once again, a nice increase over our current year budget. You'll notice it only saying, like 304,000 increase over estimate, but the total increase over our current year budget is a little over $1 million. This is due to the increase in the grants and municipal aid projects. That's the one that I was asking to use for the Camp Avenue. And that one was about over 400,000, and the increase in educational cost share that they're giving us this coming year compared, you'll see that we're budgeted for the current year for 13,772,000, and they're proposing right now 14,436,000. So that's the other increase we're seeing. So while the state's giving us money, we're happy. And in the last section that you'll see here, actually, there's another page, sorry. On the last section on this page.
Well, I'm sorry. I have 2 hands up that I'm
sorry
ignoring. Counselor Page, is that
I'm
current?
done, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
you're good.
My bad.
Counselor Donahue?
Just so I don't say something I'm not supposed to. The educational cost sharing, does that just get passed through to Board of Ed?
No, that stays with us. This is one of the few ones the Board of Ed just comes to us, and it offsets the costs of the Board of Ed's, some of the Board of Ed's budget. So they get grants specifically that go straight to them, like the lunch program, special education assistance, other grant tuitions programs, that goes directly to them. This is the only one that comes directly to us.
So it goes into offset the 7.
Goes in as part of our revenue to offset all the expenditures, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Mankey?
Just a quick question. That's it, the 14 million. Is that been approved by the legislature, or is that pending?
That is pending. That is the proposed right now.
So it could change up or down based on what the legislature says.
Usually, once they put something out there, they don't want to take it away from this bucket.
I would assume so, yeah.
So, and we did see that they increased, as you'll see, the estimate for this year. They already increased during our current year, the amount of money that we're getting. So it looks hopeful that right now, while the state's staying pretty flush, that we'll get this money.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Just curious, the FEMA storm assistance, do you know whether that?
Next section.
Oh,
You're hopping ahead on me. So the FEMA storm assistance, it was just this year. We're not getting anything next year. It's a one-time event.
Budget for it, but I'm just curious, do you know whether it covered all our expenses or not? It did, okay, great.
They will cover. So there's only a certain percentage during the formula. It covered, this was one of the few times, this was from that August storm, like a year and a half ago. They actually, this is one of the first time that they said that they would cover not just overtime, but regular time for employees, because usually it's only overtime. So for some classification of employees, they actually covered that. So it was really, they went out of their way to make sure that they were trying to cover as much for us as possible, along with equipment usage and everything else.
Counselor Page?
The federal monies that have come in.
The ARP money?
Yes, or if there are any other federal monies, when we've gone through other line items or in previous council meetings, when there just have been references to projects going on, it seems like there is a lot of money that has come our way. And I don't,
It's not in
Where
the
is it
it's not in the general fund.
reflected?
So this is just the general fund.
ah,
So we have a fund that is for grants.
okay,
And literally there's one revenue line there and there's one expenditure line there. So all the projects that we come before you to get approved, they get spent out of that grant
and
fund.
that's reflected in here somewhere in this.
An approved budget. It's an
Right.
approved
I see.
grant.
'Cause
And
we don't have
then
to do anything about it. I see, okay.
And we aren't guaranteed the money year after year, or we are.
it's
Right.
just a grant for a certain amount of time. So we set up a special grant account
Gotcha,
for them.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
And by the way, we should be getting the second half of that in the next couple months.
okay.
Okay.
And on the last page, we kind of estimate all our canceled purchase orders that we don't use, those encumbrances from the prior year. That stayed the same. And you'll see the transfer from cemetery fund. And we'll go through this as special revenue fund is the cemetery fund. They fund all of their expenditures within the operational budget. So it changes each year depending on what their expenditures are. The other ones stand steady. Those are just amounts that come in based on the trust agreements as interest for both the cemetery trust and the Hubbard fund. That's the library Hubbard fund. That you'll see an expense line that corresponds to that. And that is the total revenue picture for this coming year. I will tell you that there is out here, and I've not put it in this budget. The state legislature has out there proposal to cap motor vehicle taxation. And you remember this happened before at 29 mils. But they also say the state for the first year will fully reimburse you. But just like everything else,
Then
the
that
years
goes
goes
away.
down, it goes
Yep.
away. I don't expect this to pass, even if it does for this year, at least we're supposed to be made whole. So I have not included any references in here for right now, but that's something that you might be hearing in the future. Okay. So on in our books, you're going to go to the public health section. That is after highway. After planning and development. I forgot I didn't have a planning and development. I think I gave it to John.
Maybe it's before public works.
So for public health, they have not finalized their budget yet. Typically, we've usually seen about a 5% increase over the current actual payments. So that's what we've reflected in here. So you do see an increase paid to the health district of $8,472. That's the 5%.
When will they finalize, do you know?
They usually don't finalize theirs till May.
After we're done.
After we're done.
Okay.
Next one is one that asked to be put in place this year, the environmental health for the $500, and there has been no change to that one. We included it again for this year. This is that sustainable Connecticut projects that they asked for last year.
Yes.
207,998, that's salaries?
Which one are you looking
I'm
at?
sorry, on the.
The health services
Health
piece?
services?
That's the Department of Public Health, right?
We contract.
Other contractual. Yeah, other contractual, just all the districts within this health district pay in to cover their expenditures, and this is our portion.
And that payment is based on population or town?
It's based on, I believe, I don't think base theirs on grand lists or population. I believe it's on population for them.
So
And
there's some appropriation, how each town pays, okay?
Yeah.
Counselor Nagel?
It is based on population. My wife's on the health district, so I'm informed with or ask her not a lot about that, and she has been off and on for many years. Newington, I believe, is the largest of the towns in terms of population, so the percentage obviously is higher, and it's per person. I have the figures somewhere, but I didn't take them with me and I don't think we need them at the time. You just have to pay if you wish to be part of the health district, which I think we do
We
need
do,
to, and
yeah.
even more so now. That it's like the MDC. There's a set amount, whatever you need to, the formulas may be different.
Yeah, if the MDC, which we'll get to, the MDC is based on grand list.
I didn't meet 10.
No,
They
that's
talked
great.
about that, but just that there is an amount based upon
precursor.
some formula, and that is the amount if you wish to continue to be
Yes.
part of them.
We did last year, but we got reimbursed through a grant for this. We did, they asked for additional money last year because of all the vaccination clinics and everything else they had to do. It was like, they asked us for like 30-something thousand, and we got reimbursed through the State CARES Act at the time. So we definitely gave it to them because they were doing a lot of things for.
You would call it the February 8th meeting, it's per capita amounts. So those are their estimated.
Oh.
So now we're going to community service. This is Carol's section. I'm just gonna briefly go over her budget changes and then you can talk about the services that she had to give during COVID. Not too many changes in Carol's budget. You'll see both the full-time salary and part-time salary. These all reflect raises for all the groups in these two areas. There's a longevity increase just of $100, and that's a contractual amount that has to be included. And down below, you'll see some ins and outs that Carol managed to increase where she did and try to offset that in other areas to be able to put it more appropriately where she could most valuably use it.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, Carol, I noticed under your objectives, the second bullet, secure space for administration of holiday food and gift program in November and December. Plan, as the building was being planned, was originally to use the community center space. Can you describe what the issue is and how we can, I don't know, how we can help, but well, first of all, just describe what problems you're having.
Sure. Obviously, the space here is more condensed and more efficient than the old building that we had to work with. We had, the stage, the old town council chambers, and the mammoth undertaking of doing the food distribution in November. We actually are able to do out of our space. We kind of came up with a system we think we will continue with, a drive-by distribution of pre-packed food for November. So yay. December becomes more difficult. We start getting gifts in from all layers of the community, which is amazing. This community is so supportive, but we don't have the dedicated space. I mean, we are already putting extra food that comes in unplanned in offices and kind of tucked everywhere. So having a space, particularly for the early weeks of December, to both receive gifts, sort gifts. We have close to 800 individuals that we match individual gifts with. And then on the days of distribution, which we spread over a week so that we're not impacting, too many people in at one time or parking or traffic. We set up an area where folks can actually select from some of the generic donations gifts that will be helpful to their family. And we just need space to do that, dedicated space that's convenient and accessible, because during all of this, we are still providing the regular services that we do.
It's not necessarily an expenditure, but it's just a conversation, let's say, between you and some of like Parks and Rec and the town manager, or maybe the senior center that you've got to come to this year. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Menke?
Can you give me an explanation of consultants and special contractor fees? Or the line item?
So that is our clinical people that offer services, and I tried to increase that because we anticipate that we're Going to see more
as you
need in
ramp up
that area.
COVID, right?
Yeah.
So you hire people to see,
Contractually, we have a clinical coordinator, full-time position within the budget. And then contractually, we hire people. We
and
have-
it's based on a need. So if you have so many appointments, you have to get so many contractors in this.
Right. And we're kind of capping at this point with the amount of staffing we have and the amount of need that's being identified.
Yes, Counselor Page.
Does it seem, based on the need that you're able to meet it with existing staff and consultants? Generally speaking.
I am anticipating an increased need. So we went 6 months without a clinical person. So there was a lot of my doing kind of double duty and just kind of meeting with people and getting them connected with outside services. Now that we're back and students are, youth are out in the community, and I think that all of the needs over the past 2 years are landing with people. We're seeing an increase in, there was a statewide survey that indicated 16% of people statewide identify some level of anxiety or depression as a result of what we've been through as a community. So I anticipate a need to have that grow. But right now we are meeting it. We are at a point where we would have to cap and put people on waiting lists.
And that's why, and not to get deep into this now, I'm just saying that's why I would love to talk at some point more about, is it feasible to utilizing licensed clinicians to generate more revenue through insurance and fund, offset any expenditure for staff to then better meet those needs? And I don't mean to get into all this now.
That sounds like a good future discussion. Yeah.
Thanks.
But just to clarify, but now if you have no capacity to counsel someone, you set them up with outside services.
We set
the
them up
community
with outside
services.
services. We also will be able to use some of the ARPA funds. So that's kind of.
So nobody's going wanting, they're just being transferred out to a outside professional.
Right. And we're in the process of reaching out to new additional contract staff, because contract staff we have are capped at their personal capacity to take on cases. But we will start doing that as well.
Carol, you indicated that there were, because the youth is out in the community now, whatever. What's either the overlap or the collaboration between your services and those in the school system?
So we work very closely with the schools, and the schools will identify and make referrals. The schools tend to work with the academic issues and behavior issues within the school, but then within that setting, obviously they identify issues that are, more extended family issues, personal anxiety or depression for that individual youth. So those are cases that are getting referred to us.
Okay, but there's a collaboration.
There is definitely a collaboration.
Thank you.
Anything else, counselors?
Thanks for your work.
Because Carol was brought here to address two, the services during the pandemic, I think that you guys asked to see during one of the meetings. So while she's here, do we want?
Briefly, I know there's a lot on the agenda. I did submit a report that you all have access to, and I think that summarizes a lot. But I think sometimes just looking at it, people don't realize, we hear countless times from volunteers, some of you on this board, that until they were helping us doing the work, did they realize the countless number of hours that goes into the food distribution and the holiday distribution, which is like one tiny little portion of all that we do. So I just kind of wanted to share that for the public at large. We did create a video, which is on the town YouTube archive page under Human Services, so that can give folks more detail on what we're doing and what we're providing as services. we've seen an increase in financial casework up, I think it was 56 or 58% in the number of hours that we're providing, to an increase of like 5%. So that kind of speaks to the level of complication of the cases that are coming in. We have seen increased referrals from police and fire, largely surrounding issues of safe home issues, mold, hoarding-like conditions, and an assessment for, is this person safe in their home independently, and connecting them with the services that they would need to keep them safe or make them safe. Home health services and a whole variety of other resources that we'll work to connect them with. So those hours have gone up also 58% in the past 2 years. Clinical, the hours really are skewed when you just look at them on a chart, because the position was vacant for 6 months. So Ann McAdams was hired in the end of September, hit the ground running, and like I said, is seeing about 10 cases a month. And we have 2 contract people seeing another 4 cases a month, and would like to grow that ability. Ann is also working on some groups that will be provided to the community, and some presentations on increased identification of substance use for youth and vaping. And also there's an adult workshop, which I think I sent to all of you. Amazing presenter, and it's focused towards adults and people who care about youth, and how do we respond to the youth and the stress that we're seeing. Our youth programs, that was kind of an up and down over the past 2 years. Our primary youth coordinator and our part-time youth worker went to training to learn how to adapt programs, do it safely, modify activities, and so forth. And so we are taking all of that in mind, starting now with a spring program and a summer program. We were able to do spring and summer last year as well. And the whole goal behind that is to connect youth to people in the community, to positive leisure activities, to safe risks. So, instead of doing as teens, we are challenged by that idea of risk. Instead of doing the less positive behaviors, come out on the challenge course and climb the wall and go down the zip line and get that feeling out in a more positive, guided way. Lisa is our administrative secretary. She's amazing. She took on this past year the 4-town walking challenge, which we collaborate with CCHD on, and we won. Newington won for the first time since it started. So,
did we get our golden sneaker yet?
We do. In our office, and I like to call folks in so we can get a picture out and put that out to the community, so that we keep that title. And again, just there is more information on the video. Watch that yourselves and the community. And I'm always available for questions. But it was a 2-year period of constant modification and evolution of programs and so forth. And I can't say enough that first, my staff, what an amazing team. The community, amazing support. We got calls saying, I got my supplement and I really don't need it, and let me give you half to support your programs. So financial, volunteer hours, the whole community rallied and supported the programs. And I think that speaks to what a positive community Newington is.
Councilor Meg, you have a question?
Yeah, I've been asking to put this on the agenda. It would have been nicer to have it closer to the holidays when the distribution happened. But I've been involved the last 2 years, both my wife and I and my grandson, for a short period of time. I'm totally amazed at the amount of charity and the amount of donations that this community gives to our fellow citizens. And totally amazed at the number of volunteer hours that go in. I mean, you guys run
We have
around.
about 100 volunteers and they probably provide, oh my God, I couldn't even estimate, but thousands of
For the
hours.
food and the gifts and the people who sort them and categorize them and wrap them and all that. And I am just amazed at the generosity of this community and the coordination from you and your staff, because me just visiting, it looks looks like chaos, but you guys all know what's happening, you know what's going on. And I can't compliment you folks enough for the work you do for this. And the community in general for all their charity, because I think, they give their time, talents and treasures to make sure that other people in our community have a great holiday. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I agree. And when I go to meetings, regional meetings, while other towns are saying, oh, I'm really struggling, I can't get folks to come forward, I'm always blessed to be able to say, yep, no, Newington is stepping forward. So
That's awesome. Counselor Rada?
Yes, I know that, well, just a couple of questions regarding substance use disorders and housing instability. We know that the pandemic has exacerbated both of these, including for substance use, including overdoses. What are the resources that are in place, and what are the networks that you have that are involved to focus on this?
We serve on the Opioid Coalition in cooperation with CCHD, network there, have resources, and have had folks identified. To be honest, I think part of the negative of the isolation of the past 2 years in the pandemic is people flew under the radar and stayed home and isolated, and nobody knew the wiser that they were really struggling. And as we are opening our doors and coming out, that's where we're seeing more and more, and we will work with all of the resources that we have. Intercommunity has both mental health, physical health, and substance use health, and an abundance of other resources that we will try and connect. That being said, everybody's identifying this need at once, and so there will be access obstacles and capacity issues at all of those resources as well. And I forget the first part of substance use. Oh, housing.
Yeah.
Housing, least solvable issue that comes through our door. I wish I had a magic wand and could place everybody. We had,
you and I both. Yes.
we had someone come in as a walk-in on yesterday who we, couldn't get into a shelter. The shelter system was full. Their solution is use your natural resources. Well, if these folks had natural resources,
they wouldn't be
in this situation.
Right.
So we're always scrambling to try and connect someone, at least on a temporary situation, to a safe place. Still looking to connect them with the shelters eventually, because they have some wraparound services that will move them in a direction of stability.
And we know that at the end of this month, the warming centers and some of the shelters will be closing, and it's
moratorium has ended.
Exactly.
And Unite CT, which was the agency federally appointed to distribute money, has suspended all of their aid because they had taken on so many applications that they feel that the number of applications they have waiting to process are going to gobble up the rest of that money. So we will be looking for, other ways of meeting that need, but it's just not an easy solution. And folks come to us who have always lived in Newington and want to stay in Newington. And that's not always necessarily going to be an option.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. We're now moving on to the Senior and Disabled Center services. You'll look here and you'll see the full-time services, the full-time salaries.
being increased. That's offset by the part-time positions. So we took a part-time person and made them full-time. They had given up a full-time position at one point, and we're finding, you know, now that Diane's retired and everything like that, they reevaluated the staff that they need over there to, you know, service the programs and the meal program. So you're seeing kind of an adjustment between those two lines, with part-time going down 50,500 and full-time going up 53,057, which also includes that person being raised to a full-time and the raises for that department. Longevity, of course, contractual. You'll see in her comments here regarding equipment rental, that is decreased because they got a new copier along with the equipment maintenance. Contractual increased along with technical supplies because of the additional resources they need for program and services that they offered to address the people at home in the pandemic, and trying to be able to give them the services still that some people won't feel comfortable for a while coming back out.
Okay. Any questions? All right, we're all set there.
All right. Dial-a-ride, pretty straightforward. We've got increases in the full-time salaries, part-time salaries. Those are all wage increases, and the longevity is contractual. Depending on how many years your longevity payment goes up.
Okay.
Mission on aging and disabled, that is a wage increase for the clerk for those meetings. Just a small one, it's 43. And the Human Rights Commission stayed flat at $750.
Moving into library next. Okay.
Next door.
Administration, you're seeing an increase for the full-time salary. That's AFSCME along with administrative raises, and a decrease in longevity due to retirements, and a decrease in the data services due to the rate reduction from Kinetic Connections. That's one of the services they use. Other than that, everything stayed flat. Yes.
Question, I'm looking at, excuse me, looking at full-time salaries, and this is just percent of salary increase for those
in this
who are currently.
Yes.
Okay.
Some of them are administrative positions that are under this department of the library, and some of them are AFSCME. And both AFSCME and administration got the same percentage increases for the year.
The reason I'm asking is because I know that there are two full-time positions. I think people that retired or left, and that was over the last couple of years.
Correct.
And there's still, the two positions are still there, but they're not, there's no hiring for those. And
not in this department, so it might be in one of the other departments within the library. So their staff are spread between not just here, but circulation. I'm pretty sure all the ones in administration have been filled.
Yeah, these would be, yeah, I probably wouldn't be administration.
Yeah, it might be within the circulation department or the children's circulation. They staff are within all of them.
And I know now that the library is open 7 days a week, including.
Yeah, you're
several
gonna
hours
see
on
that.
Sunday,
You're gonna see that in some of the other
it's-
lines. Yeah.
There's a concern.
Yes.
Or I have a concern that this is, again, creating an increased burden on the staff that are there if at least one of those positions isn't able to be funded. So I'm just putting it out there.
To be honest, what the library submitted for their budget, the town manager didn't touch. It went through as submitted.
Yeah.
So whatever they requested to be able to fulfill what they need over there was approved by the town manager.
Councilor Nagle?
To pick up with what Councilor Rada had mentioned, being one of the liaisons to the library board, the topic of those unfilled positions has come up time and time again, and as to why they've been unfulfilled and whatever. A little bit of what you said has clarified that. Is there more that you can add to what you've already said about those positions? There's 2 full-time, I think there's 2 full-time positions. I saw a part-time one as well.
Within the administration, there are 3 full-time positions. That hasn't changed. Not within this department. Within some of the other ones, maybe child services or references, but that would be staying the same to the current budget. So unless they requested it, we didn't adjust it.
Okay, and once again, to emphasize as well, I know it doesn't supplant for what we've just been talking about. We have included, once again, reinstituted the Sunday hours that were taken away several years ago.
That's reflected in here, in the other pages, not in administration, but in the other pages.
I
when we
just
go through
wanted
them.
to clarify that as well.
Yes.
Okay.
We originally put them in the budget last year, but then COVID and really didn't happen. So we actually put them in last year in just one budget line, and you'll see that this year we distributed them to where they're finding they're really going to need them. And that will include not just part-time hour increase, but overtime increases in each one of the departments you'll come to see in some of these departments as we go through them.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Mankey?
So just overall, to get on staff again, this is what the library submitted, and it was taken from the town manager, correct? Oh, so they didn't.
We didn't change it at all.
The library didn't ask for any more positions, and we didn't provide any more positions.
Yeah. Their budget was very reasonable, very good. The town manager didn't see any reason to touch it at all as they submitted it.
I think there's a first. Usually the library comes in and we have to, we adjust.
The last couple of years, they've been very good.
Well, I would appreciate their efforts of controlling.
They did a great job that we didn't, yeah. So on the.
They get the Sunday hours, which they've always wanted.
They've always wanted, and we did, as we said last year, put it in there, but it didn't come to fruition. I think actually the first year Keith was here, the town manager was here, he reinstated the Sunday hours, but with this COVID, we just really haven't had a chance to
And just to clarify, because I don't go to the library on Sunday, it's 1 to 3 on Sunday, or 1 to 4?
1 to 4.
Oh, 3 hours, 1 to 4. That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for the general public, if they want to.
Yeah, and it does really address the needs of those people that work during the week that just,
yeah, I would think so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, the library children's services, as you'll see, the increase to the full-time staff, that's the AFSCME union contract increases. The overtime here, you'll now see, this is the overtime that they've now put in there. If you'll notice from the other years, we never had it. That's the overtime for the additional Sunday hours of the staff that they're expecting within this department to work on Sundays. And the part-time, you'll also see that increase due to raises, and once again, the additional Sunday hours for part-time workers. There was a decrease here for the movie licensing costs went down, but besides that, everything else stayed flat.
Just one more question.
Counselor Page?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I know in some professions or guild organizations, there are national standards that are recommended. Do we know if those exist for libraries? In other words, ratios of staff per circulation numbers or residents or utilization? I'm just curious.
Definitely. No, I'm not positive on that, but I can definitely ask Lisa Maston, the director.
All right, thanks. That was it. Thank you.
Down, so I don't forget. So for the next was the references department within, or did I do child services? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. References. Originally, when we put in the Sunday hours, we put it all in this department, and that's why you're kind of seeing a decrease, because now you're seeing that distributed to all the other departments where they actually are planning for the staff to come from. Once again, you're seeing a new line for the overtime for the Sunday hours, and the increase to the part-time for Sunday hours. You'll also see, and this is one area where they did see an uptick, that the public circulation material, those are the downloaded material, they're increasing for that because they're starting to see an increased use for all the digital formatting that people are going onto their website and downloading things now, which, you know, mainly due to the pandemic, I think you see the increase, but it might be something that continues
In general,
just for general because of convenience.
And I always forget about that too. That's so.
I've got to tell you,
I forget. I mean, I use digital media all the time, but I tend to use other formats. I need to remember our public library has that piece.
my 80-year-old mother constantly downloads things from the library. She loves it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's great.
it's really ease of use for a lot of people. The next one is building. This is once again just an increase for salaries, for rate increases and some increases just to get it up to the increase we're now seeing in minimum wage for some of the assistance that they have for the part-time people. Actual is an increase for the security cameras.
Just under building, this is for the maintenance of the building?
Yeah, they have a part-time person who does
So
a
the
little
cleaner,
work in there.
the person.
Yep.
And they come during, are they there during the day or just in? So they're
Because
there
then we have the contracted people that come
all
there.
at night to clean, that's what.
Yep.
that says.
They do the real heavy duty cleaning. They'll also, the contracted people also clean all their rugs a couple times a year. They do that kind of.
And that's listed someplace else.
Yes, that is under facilities. So remember when we
That's
talked
what-
facilities
right.
and the new
Okay.
RFP and that increase, that's where they are.
Thank you.
Counselor Page?
Do we know if what the numbers might be on any loss due to theft of items? Is that a significant number as it impacts purchasing?
They've talked about that in the past, I know, here and there.
Anything lately,
Yeah.
but nobody's actually been in the building lately. So,
Yeah, so it's not probably an issue.
Yeah,
and see if they have anything.
in terms of replacement of items.
Still banking on that late fee from
Well,
1985.
I remember them talking about that a few years ago before they put the new entry system in too.
Oh,
Right, that was a big
Which
issue then.
that
before, yeah.
was one of the purposes for needing that because it would kind of
Buzzer off.
buzz.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you go in a department store. So they had that new system put in a couple of years ago, 2, 3
Yes.
maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Counselor
Another
Retta?
Question, yes. Jan, is there any way that we could get information on comparing overtime for, say, reference community services, librarian position versus the cost of either one FTE or one part-time position?
So you want to
Just-
compare just the overtime?
What the overtime that we have budgeted for, how that would compare if,
Well, they don't have a lot of overtime in the library. The only overtime they have is for the Sunday hours right now within the library. So I can tell you the amount, I mean, just off the top of my head, their overtime, it wouldn't come close to what an FTE, a full FTE with benefits and pension would cost.
or the part-time? Okay, all right, thank you.
Once again, you're seeing the increase in salary due to ASME contract, overtime for the Sunday hours, and just a small increase to part-time.
Counselor Nagel has a question?
Yes, before you moved on,
Oh, sorry.
I apologize.
to emphasize that in, once again, being a liaison for the council, one of the two, that the overtime is because of the Sunday situation and because of the numbers of people with different contracts that have to be in the library at a certain time. Depending, it gets a little complicated, but they're required to have certain people with certain contracts to be
It's
there at
the-
least to compensate. So they can't
Contract.
just have a volunteer come in, or they just can't have anyone come in. And that's what accounts for the majority, if not all, of the overtime that's listed there. It's not like other departments where there are special emergencies, such as the police department, obviously, that require overtime because of a special emergency need. So I wanted to clarify that in indeed, it's required because to keep it open on Sundays, but it is not because of any kind of emergencies of any sort.
So the ASME contract, just to know, would require a super driver at a certain level be in there, even if it's just to supervise the part-time workers.
Exactly. And I think that there are certain positions, you know, as Councilor Nagel was saying, that they're required to be asked.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks.
So, all right, now I'm trying to remember, did I do collection management with you guys? Okay, all right. I flipped back, that's why I got off. Program circulation. This is actually one of their bigger departments in their library. This is salary increases for ASME and some step increases for some full-time staff per the ASME contract. Overtime, once again, for the Sunday library hours. Part-time increases, part-time employees in the libraries also get step increases along with wage increases. They're one of the few areas that do get that. It was part of an agreement, I guess, from a long time ago that they've kept in place. And then the seasonal is due to minimum wage raises. So the seasonal is basically the high school kids and the college kids you hire during the summer. And they were used to be in the 12-something range, and now minimum wage is not there anymore. So that's the small increase that they have there. And when next one is the Hubbard Book Fund. When you remember, see that $30 revenue, here's the expenditure side of it that offsets it. So, and that is only if you notice, if they make $30 worth of interest in here. So if you see the actual from 2020 to 21, it was only $10.
Oh, no.
So.
All right, so we're into Parks and Recreation. If there's no questions, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation. Okay.
Parks and Recreation, for the administrative section, this is one of the few that you'll see actually full-time salaries decrease. Although they got rate increases in those positions in there, wage increases, we actually increased the amount of their recreation supervisors that are being charged to the Recreation Enterprise Fund.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yes.
Just back on the first page, under
Yeah,
the
I was
personnel
looking at that
summary, under overtime hours, that's significantly increased. You know why?
That's going to be Parks and Grounds. Give me a second, we'll get to that one. But yes, they are seeing an increase. And if you remember when I showed you guys where we were for the year, one of the overtime areas that we were significantly, actually they've gone over, is Parks and Grounds and these projects. And that can range from anything about having vacant positions, which I know they just filled too, to having people out on workers' comp, which when you have any outside crew, you're always open to.
Janet, I also noticed under authorized versus requested for staff under groundskeeper 1, there was a decrease in the staff?
There is.
Okay.
So
And
when
that was under their request?
Parks and Grounds, you guys are getting ahead of me, but yeah, Parks
Sorry.
and Grounds, yes, Parks and Grounds. If you remember last year, we gave them one extra staff member because they had so many projects to do.
Okay.
And they had some vacancies. And this year, now that they've filled everything and there's not any vacancies, we did tell them once somebody leaves, we're going to be eliminating that position. And,
Okay.
and that's what happened this year.
Okay, thank you.
So as I said, in administration, there's no other real changes besides the salary decrease that they agreed to, as I said, take part of their recreation supervisor position and have it charged to the enterprise fund instead of to the operational. And now we're to Parks and Grounds.
You have a question,
Just a
Councilor
quick
Menke?
question, maybe just for Councilor Rad and Page, you could explain the enterprise fund?
We're going to get to that too.
Thanks.
That's special revenue funds in the back of the.
Well, I know, but you're saying you're charging the staff to the enterprise fund. If they don't know what the enterprise fund is, they're wondering where the staff went, who's paying for it.
I thought it was.
It's under the special revenue fund. It's when they, that we'll talk about. So any of the programs that the Park and Recs do, they collect the fees for them, and it goes in there. That's why you don't see it in our regular general fund revenue. And it offsets all of their expenditures for those programs, which include a significant amount of the park and recreation supervisors, because they run most of the programs.
And thank you, Councilor Mankin. There's probably a good reason why it's called enterprise.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Parks and grounds, once again, when we just mentioned we eliminated that one position, you'll see the salaries going down to 45,000. So usually the salary is about in the $60,000 range, but AFSCME increases are included in your off to kind of offset some of that. You're also seeing a bump up, as we just talked about before, in the hours for overtime. And along with the rate is causing the $16,000 increase.
Janet, can I just ask, it says overtime reflects, the contractual increases and budgeting based on a 5-year average. Is throughout the town, do we do the budgeting for overtime the same, or is this a different?
We do look at the 5-year average, and if there's something that we know was extreme, like if you're looking at, like when we did that storm, we kind of take the anomalies out of there, try to adjust for that too, highs and lows. So yeah, this is a lot of times with areas like this where it's not standard, we do use an average.
Okay, so this is nothing different from, okay, thank you.
Part-time, once again, a rate increase. Seasonal rate increase, and he did mention the seasonal. He's finding it hard to find those people to come in and during the summer and the fall for what he was offering. So he did have to increase the amount for his wages for that. Longevity went down due to retirement. Conference meeting and training, as I said, he just had 2 new people that were hired. So as he brings new people on, he likes to take them through the full training of everything involved. Equipment rental, that's just a straight increase in the costs that they're charging us for such things as, I believe, porta potties and things like that. And other contractual services did go down. And I don't know that he said why they went down. I think he just listed why everything went up. I think that's more based on what he does for projects for the year. So that did get a reduction. You'll notice under agricultural supplies, a huge increase. This is due to the cost for fertilizer and grass seed that he's experiencing even during this year to try to get everything covered. Everything else kind of stayed the same under that one. Besides those, was minor changes.
What would be covered under contractual services?
Under his contractual service, I'm trying to remember what he had covered under there. Oh, contractual services, like when he has people come out to do the clay on the tennis courts.
Okay.
And different jobs like that, that's under contractual.
That we don't have the capacity to do.
Correct. That we don't have the expertise to do in town either. Something like that.
Councilor Page?
Just the agricultural supplies, environmental impact is a concern, as well as to the extent that agricultural supplies are needed for maintaining a field or a lawn is important. Is it done just basically for that, or is it done also for aesthetic reasons?
It's done a lot of for maintenance. They handle not just our town,
right,
but they handle also the schools.
Yeah.
So then they're required to follow all of the regulations for what you can put on a school ground and the grass and the field there. So it's just not the town-owned property, but it's the schools too. So it's a pretty big when they start doing this, but they will go to the different areas. When spring comes, they'll look around and say, okay, which area needs some work? And they'll be assigned to different areas to handle that.
I appreciate that. And I certainly don't want fields or any of our areas to be falling apart, but at the same time, if there was a way to save money and decrease environmental impact of these materials, that would be something to look at. So thank you.
One other question?
Councilor.
Community garden space, does that fall under the purview of Parks and Grounds?
Is that the one over at the senior center?
That's what I think we have two. We have another one over near the Deming.
I know the senior center takes care of their own. I'm not sure about the Deming Farm one.
I feel like that's.
I'm not sure. Do you?
I can just try to being on the Parks and Rec Board, the Deming Young Farm is just, they just provide the land. They don't provide fertilizer or maintenance. They just provide the land and clean it at the end of the year and then you.
Yeah, I believe I read the agreement where the agreement is that they kind of, they get to keep the hay if they do mowing every once in a while and get to keep the area there. I think it said in an old agreement that I was reading way back when.
And the water's provided as well, correct?
The water's provided, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's water provided there at the site.
Yep.
That's what I was wondering, because I have a community garden plot, but in another town, and I was curious to see where, in terms of departmental, where it fell under and.
Yeah, it's under Parks and Rec.
Under Parks and
I
Rec,
believe.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on to cemeteries.
So as I mentioned on the revenue line that you saw, you'll see the 182,794, the total, that is offset by the revenue that gets transferred in from the cemetery trust account. This is for the services that they provide for the cemetery. This is for the staff that they have over there. This is for some of the maintenance that they do over there, with part-time and seasonal, to upkeep and service that area. We see increases to full-time salary. That is the AFSCME position. Part-time, that's a rate increase. And the seasonal, once again, is a rate increase for all those different areas. Agricultural supplies, you'll see that one up a little also.
Deputy Mayor Draco?
I just have, wouldn't the same percentage apply to agricultural supplies?
They don't handle as much of it here because some of it does get handled within when we get to the special revenue funds within the cemetery trust. So some of that might be more stuff you'll see in there that they take care of.
Thank you. Councilor Menke?
So this is just really a budget neutral, right? The money comes in from the trust and we spend that money. If we spend less money, we get less money from the trust. If we spend more money, more.
Well, no, it's usually, they can't really go over this budget. There's nowhere to transfer something in for them. So the money that they bring in, if they don't fully spend it, we get to keep it.
So this technically doesn't come out of the taxpayer's pocket because it's paid for by the trust.
So it comes out of the trust, and when we get to the special revenue, you'll see that special revenue, that cemetery trust generates its own income from selling plots, from all the services they give.
That's good to know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No change to historical properties, that's still $500. I know some of the work that Joe, our facilities director, has been looking at is kind of taking the place of some of this a little when he goes and looks, but.
Yeah, I guess what would be taken out of this 500?
Nothing really has been taken out of this 500, so.
Because when we're talking about improvements, we're talking about much bigger ticket items than this.
Yeah, this is just ground maintenance, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just grounds,
That
just
helps.
grounds.
That's what I was
Okay.
gonna ask you.
It's
Thank
just,
you.
With a historical property, obviously, there's stuff that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's handled in other places. This is just for the outside
Okay,
grounds.
all right.
Facilities and,
Yeah,
yeah.
which I think more parks and facilities have been basically covering under theirs, and we haven't really seen anything being charged here.
Okay.
The agreement with the Historical Society, because I've been on that
Yeah,
as
is that we
as
put
an
it there.
individual on that in a past president many years ago, is that the town takes care of the exterior and especially the Callaghetti House, where the town can rent and hold events. In the interior, we're responsible for that. The agreement is that the Historical Society, as a separate entity, funds interior museum rooms and rooms that are relegated to the museum itself within the houses. So there's that agreement, and that I think a $1 lease for the facilities,
it is
because the
a
town
$1
owns
lease.
the properties. It gets a little convoluted, and that most things are funded because they're exterior or special situations outside of this budget. It's come up year after year. Why only $500? At one time, I guess it was thought to fund that more and not have the other. I don't know at this point. So it is taken care of in that way. So the Historical Society does fund and is responsible for interior museum sections, but because there are historical homes, there's going to be situations such as the roof. That gets even more complicated because it had to do with a previous roof being put on to improve, and the contractors did not do what is best for the house. I won't go into the rest. The town has to refund it in order to preserve the entire structure itself. And there is a difference with the Deming Young farm than with the other houses, which once again, it gets complicated, but and it's kind of separate from the agreement that's here in this particular section. So I just wanted to clarify and make certain everyone knew responsibility is taken by the Historical Society for what has been agreed with the town for many years to take care of. But by the same token, the town is responsible for other things that previously mentioned here for them to take care of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Tree maintenance, no change there. That's just the full-time salary is just a stipend that's actually given to one of the full-time employees to be the tree warden. He did increase the amount for conference meeting training. I believe they bought a bucket truck to try to do some of their own tree work. So they're going to get training on that.
And let's see, next we're moving into insurance and miscellaneous.
Exciting.
Insurance and miscellaneous. So as you'll see, the municipal insurance, we haven't gotten the actual renewals yet, except for workers' comp. So you're seeing a slight decrease in workers' comp for 4,000. And for the other ones, it's actually a 2% over expiring premiums that we've budgeted in there. But as I said, he hasn't gotten the finalized, but that's what they're projecting.
Okay. When are those finalized numbers due in?
Usually later in the spring, end of April, beginning of May.
Okay.
He'll get them for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Counselor Page?
Why is liability jumping so much? Let's see, the umbrella liability, the general liability, it seems like there's an increase there.
That's a 2% increase is what I said. Yeah,
okay,
that's a
I'm sorry,
2% increase. That's okay. That's a 2% increase. So yeah.
Okay.
Council Deputy Mayor Draco?
The agent fees went up a bit. Is that?
Per the RFP, when we sign the contract with them, they get certain amounts each year.
Yeah, I understand. I'm sorry, is it a yearly contract?
I think they signed the last contract like 3 years ago, and I don't know if it's 4 or 5 year contract. Their our agent of record is USI.
Yeah, and it goes up every year for the contract.
It goes up for the contract, so they might keep it the same for a couple of years and increase the third year. I'm not sure, but it's as per the contract.
Okay, thank you.
The Greater Hartford Transit District.
John, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to follow.
Sorry.
I think Mitch asked about the umbrella liability policy.
Yeah.
And you said it was 2%, but I'm looking across the line here, and it's 1.4%.
I'm sorry. I was looking at, I was looking at that before. I'm looking at general liability. I didn't look at umbrella. He was supposed to be doing 2% as per his note here. He says expiring premiums. So I will have to ask him about that. Yep.
John, only because I didn't know if, when you responded, if you meant the overall was a 2% increase folded and the 8 and the others
No,
were
it
folded
should be,
into it.
it should be, he was saying it's increased by 2% over expiring premiums, so it should be up for all lines.
Okay, thank you.
I'll double check that with him.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I don't do math all the time. But.
No, I was actually looking at the general liability one, and I missed the umbrella when you said that.
Question, I don't think.
No, you did say umbrella, and I just heard liability, and I went to the first line.
No, thank you.
Well, even that one's 5.1. 5.1.
Yeah.
So I'll also have to ask him if he added anything. So he might have also been including any new items we had to add to the insurance. So that might be the other change, but I'll double check on that with him. Yep. For our Greater Hartford Transit District, this is the fee. This is
per capita. So this is based on population that they charge us. And it's 17 cents per person to run this service within the town of Newington. Way back when, I don't know if you remember, last year's the first year that we went up in over 10 years. And what we were giving them something kind of flat for like 10 years. And finally, they kind of, when they talked to Keith, they said, this is kind of changed. You guys got to go up to the amount that we're asking, 17 cents per person. And that's why we increased it last year. And they had a small increase this year. With the cost of gas, I would have expected more, but we'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no
no, that's the
kidding.
other.
I'm pretty sure they gave us this one before they, I think the letter was, January 6th. So, they might be rethinking that one, I assume. Employee benefits. You'll see here some things go up and go down. Medical insurance, the town side has so far, knock on wood, had a great year. We're staying steady. We're not increasing the amount for medical insurance. It's being offset that we got a slight reduction in dental. So that's why you're seeing it go down. It's a 24,900 reduction, but everything else in our medical side, we flat.
And this is
Counselor Page, go ahead.
fully self-funded.
Fully self-insured.
And this is just because utilization, thank goodness, went down.
Utilization, our claims levels were good. We've been staying steady for the last couple of years. And you'll see it in the health benefit fund. When I first got here, the amount we would pay in and the amount that our claims were, we were usually really close, maybe, in the last couple of years, our surplus to help grow the health benefit fund, which is one of the special revenues, has increased to like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which helps us bring up that reserve that we need for future claims.
Some policies, I know my employer provides an incentive for me to engage in healthy practices and well visits and so forth, and therefore there's then a discount. Does that happen for our fund and therefore decreasing the cost of the town?
So right before the pandemic, we were looking to put a wellness program in place for the town side. The Board of Ed, I believe, has one.
Good.
And Anthem was giving us money to do it.
Right.
And then we were going to do different programs and have people go more. And when the pandemic hit, our agent of record kind of said, maybe we should hold on. If not a lot of people want to go to the doctors right now, but we're revisiting that program and getting together with our agent of record to put something in place. It's kind of difficult because of union contracts to give people decreases in what they pay for their portion of the health insurance. So what we might be looking at instead was one of the ideas they had is to give them more in their HSA fund. If you meet these criterias and you do your wellness visits, and if you get this done, we'll give you a little additional amount into your HSA. So
Then we could realize hopefully savings for our taxpayers.
we'll continue to keep everybody healthy and keep steady.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. You're seeing an increase in life insurance. Life insurance is based on salary, so that increases with salary increases. Retirement, the 3 pension funds we have under retirement, well, we have 4, but the 3 major ones 3 ones paid out of here are the police, municipal, and administration. All those, when the actuaries gave our numbers, were a decrease. The reason you're seeing an increase is because for all those currently, 2 of those pension plans are closed to new employees, both the municipal and the admin. So every new employee here basically is covered under like a 401k. And once your salaries go up, the percentage stays the same that they're giving, and you're seeing that increase here. Along with same idea with Social Security and Medicare. Those are all salary based.
Okay. There's no questions because we're trying to understand. No.
I'm sorry, but
I feel like there's questions on things we understand a little
You're
better.
just hearing like Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, I know.
I've been on the insurance committees before, and it just as you serve on those, you just start to truly grasp it, and then your term ends, and it starts all over again.
Explaining
but it's a learning curve.
self-insured is always fun.
Yes.
Under donations and contribution, just the only change is the contribution for the 150th anniversary, because I think that's supposed to be done this year. Yes.
Yep.
So everything else stayed the same.
Can you explain contractual services?
Yeah.
That's just what we classify donations under. So if you look at, that's just a total of all the lines below.
Oh.
When we give that, you'll see the first numbers are like the org numbers, I'll call them, and the object is under contractual is what we pay these out of. So they all have the same object number.
Okay. You good? Okay.
There was no change to the amount for the manager's contingency. That stayed the same at 48,500.
Is that a slush fund? Is that
Um,
what is
that
that?
is
And I don't mean
for-
that I don't mean that in a negative way. No, I mean that just factually.
This is unanticipated things that come up. Like last year when he talked to the registrar, they said, well, this might happen. He goes, I don't want you to budget for might. If it happens, I'll cover it under here,
So
stuff
it's a
like that.
discretionary
It's
fund to
discretionary.
cover
Yep.
thing. Okay.
That's
that's
under
cool.
his discretion on a day-to-day basis. Whereas the next contingency you see has to come before you guys for
Gotcha.
me to move anything.
Of course. Okay.
So,
Not for us personally.
Right. Well, James was smiling. I didn't mean it.
and the next is a special contingency. So if you look at last year's budget, it was the 335,000. We've gone back down to the normal 200,000 flat. 335,000 was because the police contract hadn't been finalized. So any salary increases that we're anticipating, but we haven't put in any of the departments, go in here. Right now, all the contracts are done. All the increases are actually within their own departments and not in here anymore. That's what we were trying to move towards because it gets kind of confusing when you put them in here and then later on the year, like I had to ask the guys for the transfer to move them over to the correct departments.
And this fund takes council action.
It does. I can't touch this until you guys say so.
Okay.
We keep going. We already talked debt, but you'll see the full amount of debt there. 2.5 million we'll be paying compared to the original budget of 2.2. So although it says a decrease from, that's a decrease from the revised budget when we move the premium money over. So, but it is an increase to the budget expenditure from last year to this year.
Okay. Any questions? All set.
MDC is our next one. You know, while I say it's a 2.69% increase, that actually isn't bad for one of the increases we used to get. And last year we were flat or a little decrease. So over 2 years, only having this much of an increase isn't a bad thing. You'll see within the narrative up above that this is based on our grand list. So it's great to grow our grand list, but with it, sometimes the assessments we get also increase. This is one of them. So we've been going 2020, we were only 8.98% based on grand list, and we've gone up to now 9.05. Yeah.
And there was, I know, an increase years ago to the individual resident to fund the retrofitting, for lack of a better term, of the systems as they fed the cove and the mess over the years that was. Are these numbers impacted by an assessment relative to that work being done, or is that separate?
No, this is separate.
Okay.
That's separate.
We pay for that individually as water users. This is for the the other end of this, the sewage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is for
This is
them.
the output. That was the input.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's a good way to put it. As I said, over 2 years, a 2.69% increase isn't bad for them, considering this covers their operating costs for MDC to service us. And it includes all the people regarding the projects, includes them doing work within our town, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I remember one year they included that 12%.
Oh, that was a killer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that was a killer.
I
So
think
this
the
is much more
first, I think
palatable.
the first year I was here, they got it down to 7-8%.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So when I saw 2.69, I'm like, oh, okay. I expected to be a lot more after last year. The next section is capital improvement. We've already gone through that. And equipment reserve. We've gone through that.
Liability.
the other night. They'll go through that, but employee leave and liability. So we have an old program in place. I shouldn't say old, but it has been retired, where people hired before a certain date were allowed to get paid out for some of their sick time when they retired. That's no longer in place. We literally on the town side only have 6 employees still eligible for this payout. Actuaries go through and determine how much we should put in. And they're slowly but surely decreasing the amount each year. So that's why you see a decrease, both the Board of Ed and ourselves, in the amount that we have to fund.
Is this, I may be confusing the terms. I know in the other night when we started to go over the budget, there was a discussion of, I believe, a 2.5 million transfer from a liability fund. And I think you, Ms. Murphy, or someone made reference to that fund was no longer, I don't know if you used the word needed or if it was going to be diminishing over years. Am I incorrect?
I did do a transfer. I never do a transfer out of here.
Maybe I'm using the wrong term. I thought it was 2.5 million that we were utilizing in our budget. And I have to go back to the notes. Maybe I'm
I'm not
misunderstanding.
remembering.
I don't remember that
Okay, I'll
one.
go back and. I'll
Yeah,
check.
this
Sorry.
one will go away.
Maybe that's what, okay.
Yeah,
maybe
this
that's
one
what you were
will, you
referring
got
to.
that part right. This will go away. Once those 6 people on the town side retire,
Maybe that's it.
our liability goes away with it. And it also covers the Board of Ed.
Okay,
So
all right.
Do we know how many people on the Board of Ed side?
I want to say last year when we did the census, when I gave it to the actuaries, I want to say they had about 12.
12?
Yep. So we definitely are getting down here. It's not going to be much longer before. Well, it depends on how long people want to stay. So, but it's definitely a grandfather system that's going away.
Any other questions? Into special revenues now?
Yes. Special revenues. I believe this is our last section.
Our last
So
tab.
special revenues covers, just quickly, I'll tell you, cemetery, road aid maintenance, LoSiP, recreation enterprise that we talked about, human services needs and donations, senior and disabled center donations, the insurance reserve fund, the public school capital improvement projects fund, our health benefit funds, that's where we pay all our medical bills out of for both the Board of Ed and ourselves, the land acquisition fund that we do the transfer for, and the recreation CIP fund. So just to start you off, I'm gonna flip pages. This is just a summary on this first page, but if you go to the cemetery fund page, you'll see there, they'll show on the top, where it says cemetery fund, the money coming in, they do get some investment income. There's the interment charges, the grave sales, and they get some money for veterans markers. So that's their income coming into this trust fund. And then you'll see that first line for expenditures coming out is at 182,794. That's to cover within the general fund, the operational cost. They have equipment they have to purchase each year. That's one of the big expenses, the capital outlay for 42,000. And where you see capital improvements for 60,000, I believe their project they're planning on doing this year is an expansion. They're doing some expansion within the cemetery. I know they started doing survey work on that and everything, and I think most of this is going to go towards that.
Yeah, Counselor Page, then Counselor Menke.
Maybe just to clarify my comments, going back to the general fund budget summary, I was referring to the my question about the employee leave liability reserve fund, parentheses 3. There was a 2.500 or 2,500 change from previous budget. That's what I was referring to.
That's the 25,000. Yeah, there's the 2.5 million. Yeah, that's one where you see on the first page that it's reducing. And as I mentioned, they're actuarial figures, so those numbers are going to go down every year.
That's what I was asking about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry for my confusion.
It's okay. I was like, there's not 2.5 million. Got a little worried where I was mentioning 2.5 million.
Counselor Menke.
Just a quick maybe overview. If we're building a new section of the library,
This is a cemetery.
People don't read that. My other question, how come we have 300 refunds for $3,000, but who wants a refund? When we run out of space, who's gonna fund the cemetery?
When they run out of space. I mean, that's a big question. I think sometime Bill should come in and talk to you guys about. I remember a couple of years ago, he talked about them trying to plan for the fact of when we run out of space. And there were different ideas. I know they were going the cremation route and setting a section up there too, to give some additional space going forward. But I'm not sure what their long-term plan is for this.
So this doesn't, that's my point, this doesn't include any long-term putting money aside for after the cemetery. I mean, we see other cemeteries in town that have run out of space and to maintain those, someone has to maintain them, even though there's no more revenue coming in.
Correct.
I would think then down the road, it would become a drain then on.
And he did mention it a couple of years ago when he was before us talking the budget, that sooner or later, this is it's gonna come an issue that we have to address.
Along those lines, the cemetery that was redone thanks to the generous donation of residents and our scout troop on Church Street.
Right.
Yeah.
I know at times because it is an expense, the overgrowth has been a problem there, and that's an important historical cemetery. So just as an aside, to pick up on your comments, it would be great if we could allocate a little bit of money to at least once a year clean out that overgrowth, because it does encroach on all of those historical. So we have Revolutionary War veterans, and the markers have been replaced, I think, through donation. I don't know that the town did that, but it's a pretty neat place, historically speaking. So anyway.
Would that fall under this fund, or is this strictly for?
That could fall under, that probably falls more under the cemetery within parks, where we're kind of transferring the stuff over.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thanks.
The next fund you see on the next page is the road aid maintenance. So within the CIP, when we're talking about doing the list of roads, this is where they're paid for out of. We get the revenue in of a state grant this year, $412,000, and we apportion it to the roads that are on the list. We usually just say 400,000 to round it down, and then the additional money that when it builds up, we can use for patching and crack sealing. So it keeps on funding itself as it goes along with the state aid money.
Okay.
The next one is LoCIP, same idea. If you notice within your CIP book, 200,000 of the roads that they're designated out of the 1.5 get funded through here. And we actually have to yearly submit what roads we did to the state to get the reimbursement. And we are allocated 207,000 for this coming year.
Okay.
The next one you see is the recreation account, enterprise account. This one's a big one, and you'll see all of the different, on the very top, all of the revenue sources that they have. For the different programs, the summer camp, preschool, youth, adult, that will include any of their special programs such as basketball, exercise, the seniors, the aquatic, the special needs, concession. Now that they've got the full kitchen up here, that's probably why you're seeing a little increase from that one. And facility rental. You'll also see their biggest ones are on the bottom. Well, some of their biggest ones are the extravaganza and the special events like Motorcycle Madness and different events. That's where that revenue will come in. So that's the revenue they generate to fund all their programs, which is the list behind, below the expenses for the summer camp, the preschool. So they kind of offset each other. This fund is not allowed to grow over $1 million because a couple of years ago, we put in place that once this fund reached $1 million, the additional funds in here are moved over to the recreation CIP account. So you'll see that as the next one. So when you're seeing, he's saying at the end of the year, closing balance will be $1,079,000. That $79,000 will get moved over, should be planned to be moved over to the recreation CIP.
And what's the rationale for the 1 million carryover?
We kind of set the cap the same as the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed has a cap on theirs of $1 million in their
But I guess is
CIP.
the goal of this fund to keep it at 1 million as a
Yeah,
closing
I
balance?
think
Because
we
that's
were
what it looks like.
we were seeing it grow and grow and grow, but you can't pay for any capital items. It's written into the bylaws. You can't pay for any capital items out of here. So as they saw more stuff that they maybe need capital than they do to grow this, we said, let's put the cap on this, and then you can move that money over into a recreation CIP to address the capital items that you can't purchase in here. They'll come to me and they'll be like, oh, we need to purchase that. I go, that's capital. You can't buy it out of there. It's
So, yeah, okay.
so like that huge slide one time the mountains water slide they purchased. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that can't come out of here. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, really, it can't.
I guess I'm just thinking in my brain then, if they want things on the capital side, they're really gonna be aiming to get this over that 1 million. But then that 1 million is sitting there.
It's sitting there to handle things like we've asked them to do, is to take more of their
Rec
salaries
supervisor,
out of the
yeah.
Right, so it's
operational
not
over
separate.
there.
So in my mind, I'm thinking it makes sense to start doing more of that maybe, but then they wouldn't be getting the money into the capital unless we adjusted that.
Yeah.
Cap.
Yeah. So, but we were trying to address the issue of it may be growing a little bit too big.
Right.
While still wanting it there to try to absorb some operational costs that we can say,
Mhm.
hey, you're not paying it out of the operational, you got to pay it out of here. Such as the salaries they moved over.
Okay. Thank you.
Human services, needs and donations. You can't say enough about this. As Carol was saying earlier, people donate and it's awesome. We actually just set up a new one, which I'm hoping she does a little bit more advertising on through PayPal because people wanted to make them
Oh.
online. So we want to put that out there to say, come on in, do it on PayPal, and that's some of the donations going in here. And the donations that they receive and the contributions all go to offset the expenses she had down below, such as the special needs and the prevention and the scholarship that they do.
That's a lot of money. That's good.
Yeah, it was significant. She and I were talking this past week about some of the expenditures that she's looking to maybe use the American Recovery money for. And I'm like, you make up your list, and as long as it's for this fiscal year, I can list them out. We can see what we can do to try to relieve and make something even more available under this.
Yeah.
So. Senior and disabled center donations. Once again, they have their revenue. It comes from their membership ID. They have a coffee shop over there. It hasn't really been operating, but it will. They have a gift shop over there and just flat donations that they receive. And it goes against the expenses to run the coffee shop, to run the gift shop, and some of the other areas for membership expenses that they have, that they try to give the seniors over there.
Counselor Mankey?
So this balance is, so I see there's about $50,000 balance. It just goes back into the fund then, right?
It just stays in this fund.
Stays in the fund, okay.
Yep, to cover things that come up.
I mean,
over there.
future,
Yep, sometimes like they might sit back and say they purchased through here, the cashier, the little units that they have
The new
for
unit, yeah.
for the coffee shop or the gift shop and stuff like that. Sooner or later, those have to be replaced. Those are some of the kind of things that will constantly go.
but so
through.
if they wanted to buy a new a TV set or new chairs for the cafeteria, they would take it out of this fund?
Fun, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is the insurance reserve fund. This fund is meant to pay for retro workers' comp claims that we have, that we received. So we'll get, like this past year from 2 years ago, an assessment from a workers' comp carrier that we have to pay. It's usually determined by our purchasing agent, and he gives me the numbers. So you'll notice the insurance payment, the deduction and retro went up significantly. This year, I'm estimating at 220. Last year, we only budgeted for 116, but next year we're expecting 231 for the expenditures. The only revenue that we actually planned for in here is that 125,000 that you saw in insurance that gets transferred over here. They also have, we don't budget for it because it can't guarantee it's going to happen, but we also usually do get premium refunds from the carrier that come over here.
Is this balance governed by insurance guidelines or standards? It seems like a high balance relative to claims.
Well, if you notice, we're seeing it starting coming down. So it's the retro claims, and you always want to keep a reserve of at least 1/3.
Okay.
We're keeping a little higher because we're seeing, as you see the jump and you can't always plan. This is higher because we did get return of premiums. We can't always expect that every year. So we've gotten generous ones, but if you'll notice for this coming year, the revenue coming in is not going to cover the expenditures going out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
The next one's the public school CIP account. Now, this one I alluded to when I talked about the 125,000 that we're required to give over to them. That's one of their sources of revenue for this one, along with tuition receipts that they'll get from the state and school rentals. There's a small amount they get from interest earning, but we really haven't been making that. So those are what comes into the fund.
Question on the tuition receipts. It's kind of a significant impact from what was estimated and adjusted. Is that due to more students or increase in reimbursement from the state?
Reimbursement from the state.
Thank you.
So if you see the actual from the 2020 to 21, you'll see it was 785,000. So we actually just got their reimbursement and it was over the 600,000 we budgeted. We originally just were being conservative what we said would come in. But remember, this fund can only go up to $1 million. So it's capped at $1 million. So once they go over that, if at the end of the fiscal year, it goes back to the general fund.
Yeah.
So
Do we ever get money from that?
They're always pretty good about making sure they get down. They have encumbrances in place at the end of the year to make sure they're at that million mark. The only time it was over is when we had the diesel spill where we allowed them time to bring it down because the grant went back in here.
Right, okay. Yep, thank you.
They give us their listing of what the expenditures they're going to be taking out the year. They have painting, carpeting, 750,000 for the technology equipment infrastructure. So if you remember, we did not do funding anymore through CIP for their technology, just like we don't do for ours. So they're covering it under here.
Are those the tablets?
Tablets, I think it's everything. I think it might be there in operational ones too. I'm not sure.
Big amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of money.
So this is the first year they've asked for it. So that might be
It says equipment/infrastructure. So I'm
yeah. So
wondering
it
what
might
else
be more
in there, yeah.
within the school districts too, not just for the students. It might be within the schools. So district-wide HVAC, playground renovations, district-wide vehicles. So these are the ones, everything except for the buses. So if they have to buy a new maintenance truck or something like that, that's where that comes out of it. And oh, I'm sorry. It was blacktop and then vehicle miss. So the 50,000 was for the blacktop paving at the different schools.
All right.
So you'll see at the bottom, if they use up the full 1,000, that will still leave them with 858 going forward.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
20. There's several categories where there were no expenditures, but yet it was budgeted for. Because it's COVID.
Which year column are you looking at?
I'm looking at on the left.
Near the bottom of the
Yes.
page.
So every year they'll give us what they're proposing. And then if something comes up, they will put in a budget request to transfer the money over to the projects that they need it in. So if you're looking at.
Well, there's a lot where it looks like there was no expenditure, but yet there was a proposed. I don't know,
So you're looking down here like
You're
town hall
looking at-
furniture, district-wide building system.
Like district-wide.
Yeah, so in the first column, those are the actual for the year before. And then the adjusted budget is this current year's adjusted budget and what they expect to spend in the months for this current year.
Are you saying, Councilor Draco, that because they didn't spend any, why are they anticipating 25 or 50,000, et cetera?
Yeah, I guess like, for example, well, like the playground, whatever, they didn't do they didn't spend anything last year, but there was something in the budget for 50,000. Maybe I'm not reading this properly, but I don't know, like the district-wide playground renovations, the environmental. No,
So
right.
we don't know what they've spent. We're anticipating they'll use the full 50,000 from this year. So if you're looking at the columns to the left of the wording, you'll see that's 2021-22. That's their budget. And then the second column said estimated 12 months. That's what we expect them to spend.
So you expect them to spend everything in the estimated
That's what they're
12-month
saying.
column.
That's what they're
I
saying.
think if I'm understanding correctly, if they did not spend anything in 2021, how are they expecting to spend 50 grand in 21-22?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Being stupid here.
They put it between different lines every year.
Okay, but the actual expenses for 2021 are in the far left column.
Correct.
What was in the budget
21-22 is the next
is the
column.
next column. So,
And then what we're estimating they'll spend in 21-22 is the column next to that.
How do you go from 0 to 50 grand is what I'm.
So you're looking down here and saying that their total adjusted budget for the 21-22, what they originally said they were going to spend their money on, is 1,150,000. What they're now saying they'll spend by the end of the year is 1,291,000.
I guess I'm not even there yet, I guess. I guess what I'm just saying is that these were line items, right? In their budget, and they're saying that they were gonna spend, let's say 50,000 on painting, they were gonna spend 50,000 on
And that's
carpeting.
what they're anticipating spending.
And that's, but we don't know whether they spent it yet.
That's this current fiscal year. So
Right.
those are just estimates. They're saying this is what we have budgeted and we expect to use it for this by the end of the year.
That first column.
The first column is
That's
last
true
year.
known.
That's last year.
Yeah.
That's last year's true known.
Okay, so we know that they spent those, and we're anticipating they're gonna spend these others, and then they're asking for, let's say, some other stuff, but we won't really know whether they spent.
We get to the fiscal year end. A lot of the work they'll do, some they'll do over spring break, and then as soon as school ends, they'll contract to do a lot of this stuff. So yeah, we won't know until we actually get there. If you look within the CIP book, I'll say,
Not to belabor it.
there's balances on their school
There's
CIP.
balances in
There
these.
is. There's balances in the CIP of what they've already spent.
Okay.
And I was agreeing with you, I think if I understand you, that, and maybe they're saying, we did not spend 50,000, we didn't spend a nickel in 2021 on painting, for example.
Correct.
But because of that, we need to paint now, and that's gonna be $50,000.
30,000 coming.
Yeah.
In the current year, it will be
Current year,
50.
in the current year,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
And last year they did move money around, usually during the spring when they decided what they were actually going to do. So these are all just estimates. But if you want to see what they actually spent, those balances are in your CIP book, year to date.
And the reason, and we can't really, we don't have any control over line by line anyways. For their.
Don't have control over line by line when it comes to their operational budget. Within the CIP, this is under, we pay these bills.
Okay.
So it's under ours, but this is what they're advising us that they need. So you can question it, but this is where they're going with it.
So, and not to belabor the point, but so if you go to the next one, it says that they anticipate this fiscal year spending $100,000 on district-wide security and safety.
Correct.
They're anticipating next year spending zero amount of money on
Correct.
security and safety. Even though in 2021, they spent $200,000.
So these can all be projects within their CIP. So if they've completed it for that amount, they're done. Just like when we have stuff on our CIP, we'll say this much
That
this
helps
year,
then,
this
right.
much this year, then it might fall out.
Which is what James has the chart up there.
That helps.
That's
Thank
from
you.
the CIP, our CIP. So
Okay.
also, if it's listed here, then they could shift money in and out of that, even if there's nothing allocated
Correct.
there. It's like a place marker.
It's still an open account. We don't
Yes.
close their account. They may come back and you don't want to make an account every time they use it. It will still sit here. So they could
helps.
put zero this year. I don't need anything for this year.
But if they needed something, they could take money out of the 750.
They can shift within.
and put
Shift it.
$20,000 in the bathroom
Yep.
renovations.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for my density.
No, it's confusing. It's confusing.
Right.
Are we good on that one?
Yep.
Okay. Health benefits funds, that's the next one. This is our self-insurance fund for both the Board of Ed and the town. If you look at the narrative, as I was mentioning before, both the town and the Board of Ed came in under our claim numbers. We were 1.3 million under our claim numbers this past year, which all of it stayed right in this fund, except for we kept on reducing the amount we contribute to this fund by 1 month that we contribute. So we usually contribute every month, like 230,000. When we budgeted last year and we budgeted this year, we'll do that for 11 months instead of a full 12, because this fund is right now very healthy. And that's why you're seeing that we're not increasing our medical, they're staying flat, because it is healthy. The 701,000 for the Board of Ed, that's a credit they get. It doesn't stay in the health benefit fund.
So this is under the MOU or is this?
The MOU.
Yeah, we need to really, we need to chat about that.
But is that accounted for, that 701,490 within their budget proposal?
No, it's extra.
Because they don't,
It's an
because they
extra
won't-
credit they get to spend on whatever they'd like, basically.
because if they,
It doesn't come back to pay for benefits like our side does. It was an MOU that was done 20-something years ago, I think, that we have been talking about getting rid of. And so part of the reason we've backed off on that is that with the HSA piece and all of that, we've been told for several years now that this wasn't going to be a big amount anymore as that rolled in to be fully HSA for everyone. But now we're still seeing, at least this year, a big amount.
I'm going to be doing an amount, I do, so in March, I give them an estimate. And then I give them the final numbers in September. So they don't truly know what their credit is going to be until September. They could kind of plan for it with the number I give them in March, but it fluctuates because people go with an HSA at the end of the year. I get that. But it does skew the budgeting by doing it this way. Because you're putting in the full amount that you anticipate for renewal for your health insurance, not taking into account any credit.
Right.
That's there. And last year, I believe they used it for technology because we cut their technology. It had been significantly more than this. It had been over $1 million.
Over $1 million, yeah.
For a couple of years. It has gone down. I'm thinking it's going to go down again this year because we adjusted for some pharmacy rebates that they hadn't been including. So we'll see how it goes. But I'll keep you updated on what the March looks like.
So just for Mitch and Kim, this is an area that we've argued for years about. And I did ask the town attorney to look at it, whether we can just, this MOU's been in place for so long that essentially his verbal indication to me was if one party wants out, one party can get out. So we may want, as a council, to look at this because essentially we're taxing folks for operational and then we're taxing them for this within that. But then this surplus comes forward. And instead of like on our side, it goes back into that fund to continue to fund health benefits. They get it as a surplus. So they'll either buy buses or usually things, not people, right? Because
So
it's
there's
an
no
unknown.
specific requirement as to what it can be used
There's
for.
not. And I don't really know the terms of why it was created that way years ago. I'm sure there was a bargaining chip back then for why it was done, but now it has become a pretty large, as you, the word you use, slush fund, right? Where it doesn't have parameters around what it's used for. It's at their discretion. And so in the past, when we budgeted, we've argued for, if they've asked for an increase, we would say, well, then offset your increase by this amount. And that's always been an argument because it's not a recurring amount that comes forward every year. So, well, it is, but you can't bank on it, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Fluctuates. So, so that's,
But if the money should come back into this fund to help pay. for
yeah, my
future
estimation is we need to get rid of that MOU and have that come back into the town coffers because we're paying for it out of our side. But when the reimbursement comes, we don't get that reimbursement. It goes over there for just whatever.
Just to give you a little history on the MOU, they have no risk. There's no risk on the Board of Ed side for their medical insurance, but they're 2/3 of the total population being insured by the medical.
Right.
What ends up happening is if they're under their claims, we give them a credit back. If they are over their claims, we pay for it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's nothing I've ever seen before.
So
It's
for
unique.
agenda setting, this is on my list. We need to put this on.
Can we receive a copy of that MOU? I'm looking at James.
James has one.
You can
We-
find
we-
everything.
Yeah, because we've sent it out many times.
I think it'd be very, I mean, you might agree that it'd be helpful to read through it and see exactly
But
what.
also the thing is,
a one page,
in a sense, the taxpayers are overtaxed because this money comes back, they're taxed based on what the Board of Ed thinks that the insurance is gonna be, even though they know it's gonna be less, but they put in the higher number. We tax on that and they get this extra money.
Mhm.
You know, it's like your income tax return. To get your income tax return, you go and you spend it on something. You go, you know,
Right.
take a trip someplace. You don't use that money in your savings account to go pay the next year's tax return,
Yeah.
that maybe where you may owe. And again, if they're over, we pay it. If they're under, we give them the money back. So there's no,
Yeah.
there's no,
It's a win-win on.
it's a win-win on their
one
side, and we end up paying.
And
We
the
could have
last couple of years, as I said, we've had great credits to build up the fund balance in here so that we could be a little bit more not conservative on the way we handle it and the way we budget it on our side and be able to keep ours down, or even it was a reduction last year, but keep it steady this year. Because we do assume all the risk in this. So most of our credit does come back in here. And when I first got here, as I said, maybe we get $20,000 credit, nothing
Yeah, it used
big,
to be
and it went
tiny,
back in
yeah.
here. And the last couple of years, we've just had, because of usage, as you mentioned, we've had some significant credits on the town side to help build this fund balance. If you look at to the 8.3 million that we're expecting by the end of the year.
And that fund balance is kept in order to ensure that we have it for the risk piece.
Yes. For the future claims. So if you look below, our agent of record says you want at least 20% of your claims, which was 2.5 million. We're way over that to be able to stay healthy. And that's why as we go forward, if we want to, I'm trying to see what the numbers look in March. If we want to reduce the amount that the town puts in, we can always look at doing that because we do have a safety net. This year's numbers aren't looking like last year's. So I'll have to evaluate and let you guys know when I do the March reconciliation.
Right, and while I recognize having an appropriate cushion is critically important and required by a certain percent, if we have a significant overage there, then we could utilize that money
Yeah.
somewhere.
As I said,
Or reduce the
yeah,
mill rate.
we'll reduce the
We
amount that
reduce
the
what we
town
pay.
has to contribute in next year.
Well, we're budgeting for that.
Well,
Take
we're
it out of it,
budgeting for
yeah.
that. So that's just a consideration to keep thinking about. As I said, I should be getting the information within the next week to do the March settlement information.
Okay. Everybody's good?
Thanks.
And the acquisition fee fund. So that is 20,000 in again this year, and it will bring its balance up to 132,166. Last year, we started putting the 20,000 in, and we also put the proceeds from a sale of land in here. So it's growing.
Yeah.
The next one is the recreation CIP. The enterprise fund hasn't had really too much of a surplus. So it's they're approaching 140 to park and playfield renovations. So this is more like, I know within here, they did some of the ball fields in the past year. So they evaluate each year which area they should go around these improvement that's not already covered under the regular CIP. This usually is handled during the spring.
But given that, given what we talked about earlier, there's a possibility of under the special revenue fund for recreation, like 79,000 might go into there. Okay.
But they're only apportioning out of that fund balance 140 because they're not sure. And the last fund on the list, and you guys are really sad about this, is the technology fund. That's a new fund that we set up this past year. You guys approved the transfer out of the old fund during mid-year transfers of the 1.6 million. Within the CIP is a transfer in for 450,000. I can tell you that the IT department has orders in for all new computers, but we're waiting for that are going to come in along with, they're trying to make everything more work at home friendly, I'll call it. So there'll be, for some, there'll be docking stations with laptops in them. So I know that when we all went to the pandemic and some people were home and stuff like that, it was a scramble to find laptops and to get them serviced. They'll be doing that. This also builds up to cover such things as Microsoft licensing and the patrol cars and the fire department when they need new laptops or equipment in their vehicles.
Which I know they're working on now. I think Paul's working on that, yeah.
And the life of those is what, 3 years?
That's why it didn't fall under CIP and we had to set up a separate fund for it.
Yep.
Yeah, 3 to 5. I know I haven't had my computer replaced since I've been here, so that's almost 5. Yeah, I sit back and I go, knock on wood, if it's not broken, don't touch it. But yeah, we're going to be getting all new stuff going forward, which is going to be kind of cool. We originally were hoping for it when we moved into this building, but.
And this is where police and fire would come out of for the tech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their tech, yes, not for the regular maintenance or licensing fees. This only handles licensing fees that build up, such as Microsoft, that you pay every 3 years, 4 years. The annual licensing fees and stuff come out of the IT operational budget.
Okay.
And I did want to mention to you, because Joe was really quick on getting back to us regarding the Chapman Fire Storage. He looked this up for me real quick before he left, and he said that the proposed demo was $185,000.
Yep.
As per Owen's report, the budget to repair the existing building was approximately $34,000. And Owen's report budget to replace the building as new was $446,000. Owen's estimates do not include, he said, any soft costs, and these estimates were calculated in 2020.
Thank you.
Just one last question. I know people want to go. The land acquisition fee or
Fund. I called it fee.
Sorry, fund. Was that used, for example, with Cedar Mountain when that purchase was made?
No.
It was not.
We just started
And
it.
this account, I don't know how long it's been in creation,
It's
but it
been here
hadn't
long
been
before I got
funded.
here. Yeah.
So Gail brought it up last year, before,
Last
right?
budget proceeded.
And said that that was something that it's been there and it was supposed to have been funded. It hadn't been. So we wanted to make sure that there was a set amount put in every year so that it starts to accrue. So that should a piece of property become available for purchase, we'd at least have a nest egg or
That's a great
bigger.
idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Go Deputy Mayor Bedrejko. That's it. Yep.
And that's
Any
it.
other questions, folks? For the good of the order. Looks like we're good, so we'll move on. Next item is public participation. I don't see anyone.
Just got
In the
past
attendees
NCTV studio.
And he's already here on the council, so whatever. All right. No public participation. We'll continue on, which is remarks by counselors. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Janet, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, very nice.
Yes.
This year, I don't know, maybe, I don't think it's the numbers, I think it's your presentation as well. You made it very flow easily and understandable, so thank you very much.
Yeah, Keith.
No,
I think it is, but people look at me like, oh.
Your explanation. Thank you.
Well, with any,
On my end.
with any budget numbers, we may not like them, but they're the numbers. The numbers are the
That's-
numbers.
yeah,
You may not,
yeah.
you know.
But
Mr.
you did-
Chapman has his hand up, so he's been listening in. I've seen him on the screen, so. Mr. Chapman, go ahead.
Yes, hi. First of all, I want to apologize to all of you for my absence. As you know, I've been under some medical direction for a couple of weeks. I'm optimistic if everything goes right over this week, and on Monday I get clearance to come back and be at your Tuesday meeting, if everything goes right. However, I just do want to compliment Janet and the entire staff for a great presentation. From this perspective, it's kind of interesting. Usually I'm down there. This time around, I'm watching as a citizen would watch, and I can see where we can make some improvements, but overall, I just want to compliment the staff and all of you for your questions. And I think that the town budget that we've submitted to you is it's certainly been thought out, and with little adjustment needed to be made, and still keep rate increase, which is what we have to shoot for every year. So thanks again, and hopefully I will see you on Tuesday live. If not, probably Zoom. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take
Stay
care.
well.
Thank you.
Like the last step there.
Counselor Rada?
Just on my behalf, being a new counselor, thank you, because budgets are very difficult, they're convoluted, and thank you so much. It was very clear, enough
I do
detail.
have to say the departments, when I went back and asked them questions to make sure I understood as much as I could, they were very, very good about giving their detail.
It's much appreciated, thank you.
I would second that. Thank you very much. As a newbie.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Janet. All right. We are on to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Counselor Mankey, seconded by Counselor Donahue. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We stand adjourned at 12:54. Thank you.
If you guys want to take any of that food home, please do.